Han Li and the woman had set up those formation flags well in advance. At this moment, they had chosen to activate it, and it was yet to be seen what effect these formation flags had, but just the Aureate sword formation alone was enough to immediately trap the two demented minions. One of the demented minions faltered upon seeing this before a vicious light flashed through its eyes. Its four limbs moved in a powerful manner, and it disappeared as a faint crimson shadow, attempting to force its way out of the sword formation. It was quite clear that with the demented minion's high level of intelligence, it had quickly realized that staying here for any longer would not be a good idea. However, the Aureate sword formation was not that easy to escape from. Despite the demented minion's rapid movement techniques, several hundred golden threads suddenly appeared in its path before sweeping toward it. Several crimson chunks erupted from empty space before merging back to form the demented minion once again. Before it had another chance to try and escape from the sword formation, golden light flashed around it as countless more golden threads appeared, then converged toward it at an astonishing pace. Golden light flashed, and this demented minion was sliced into countless chunks once again. Following a string of loud thumps, all of the crimson chunks self-detonated to form a cloud of blood mist, which swept toward the edge of the sword formation. Due to the fact that the mist was insubstantial in nature, it was able to completely disregard the countless sword threads around it. At this moment, a cold light flashed through Han Li's eyes as he stood outside the formation. The abilities of Azure Bamboo Cloudswarm swords were not limited to this repertoire. With that in mind, he immediately activated his sword arts, and all of the shimmering golden sword threads suddenly turned snowy white at his behest. Wisps of glacial chi emanated from these sword threads in a wild frenzy, and even though the blood mist was insubstantial, as these sword threads passed through it, a layer of ice quickly materialized on its surface. In the end, the blood mist was completely frozen into a chunk of translucent ice and was unable to move any further. A rumbling thunderclap erupted as countless thin arcs of lightning shot forth in unison from the sword threads. All of a sudden, golden light illuminated the entire formation, and the chunk of ice was reduced to powdered snow by the power of the lightning strikes. A hint of a smile appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. However, in the next instant, his smile completely congealed. The powdered snow drifting through the air suddenly began to glow with crimson light and melted into drops of liquid that were as vibrant red as blood. Before the sword threads around them could converge once again, all of these drops of liquid hurtled back in retreat. Immediately thereafter, crimson light flashed at the very center of the sword formation to form that demented minion again. The crimson light emanating from its body had dimmed slightly, but it wasn't a very noticeable change. The Aureate sword formation seemed to have vanquished this creature just a moment ago, but in reality, it hadn't inflicted much damage at all. Han Li was feeling even warier upon seeing this. He immediately injected more magic power into the sword formation to activate the full extent of its power. All of a sudden, layers upon layers of golden threads appeared within the sword formation, and thousands of those sword threads had emerged in the blink of an eye. Their numbers continued to increase as they swept toward the center of the formation at a rate that was more than twice as fast as their original speed. It appeared that they would be upon the demented minions in mere moments. Han Li took this opportunity to shoot a glance at the woman, only to find that she had closed her eyes and was carrying a formation plate with one hand while chanting an incantation. Han Li didn't know what kind of ability she was trying to unleash, but it had to be quite a powerful one, seeing as it was taking so long to prepare. Meanwhile, the 36 formation flags were trembling gently amid the tumbling and surging of countless silver runes. Those runes were all in beveled silver text. Han Li's expression changed slightly upon seeing this, yet he didn't have time to ponder the issue any longer as the other demented minion in the sword formation suddenly sprang into action. In contrast with the first demented minion, this one had remained at the center of the sword formation this entire time. At this moment, it suddenly flapped its wings, and several tens of crimson tendrils suddenly shot forth from various parts of its body, each of which was extremely thin and was several tens of feet in length. Before Han Li had figured out what these tendrils were capable of, they abruptly began to sweep through the air in a violent manner, creating a ball of blurry whip projections that encapsulated the demented minion's body. From a distance, these whip projections appeared to be a giant crimson ball, and it was still expanding at an alarming rate. As such, the crimson ball quickly came into contact with the converging sword threads. Golden and crimson light intertwined with one another amid a sharp screeching sound. Han Li's sword formation was able to prevent the crimson ball from expanding any further, but it was unable to slice through it. Han Li's pupils abruptly contracted as he made a hand seal. Countless golden threads began to emanate white glacial chi again as they swept toward the crimson ball from all directions. However, a dark expression soon appeared on Han Li's face. As soon as the white glacial chi came into contact with those whip projections, they were immediately repelled by an enormous force. The slight traces of ice and frost that formed over those tendrils were also quickly cast aside as those tendrils danced through the air. As such, even his glacial chi had failed to produce a satisfactory outcome. Right at this moment, crimson light flashed from the demented minion's body as several tens of additional tendrils shot forth to contribute to the existing crimson ball. With the influx of crimson tendrils, the crimson ball suddenly seized the ascendancy in the battle against the relentless sword threads. The crimson ball began to slowly expand once again, gradually forcing back the sword threads, and this process only seemed to be accelerating. Meanwhile, the other demented minion seemed to have been inspired by what its companion was doing, and its body transformed into a crimson blur again as it hurtled toward the golden threads on the other side. Countless crimson tendrils appeared over the surface of its body and also began to rapidly swing through the air. As such, the exact same scene was replicated once again. The golden threads were forced back by the powerful whip projections, powerless to oppose their advances. Han Li drew a sharp breath upon seeing this. It seemed that the aureate sword formation really wouldn't be enough to take care of these two demented minions. As such, he immediately rustled his sleeve to produce a dozen or so golden and silver beads. Han Li hid these lightning beads up his sleeve and appraised the situation within the sword formation with an intense, unblinking gaze and a dark expression on his face. All of a sudden, the woman beside him ceased her chanting. Han Li was elated to hear this, and he hurriedly turned his gaze toward her. Sure enough, the woman had finished preparing her technique, and the formation plate in her hand was emanating scintillating golden light. Countless silver runes were drifting and revolving around her body, and at the same time, the sky had dimmed significantly. Gusts of yin winds were swept up nearby, and even though they weren't very fierce, they possessed a penetrative bone-chilling quality that made one shiver involuntarily. The technique that she was preparing had even summoned the world's origin chi. Aside from that, a burst of immense power was also emanating from within the formation plate in her hand. The enormity of this power sent a chill down Han Li's spine, and it struck him with the same unfathomable feeling he had experienced when facing the two Xianxia monarchs earlier. Han Li was stunned by this observation, and he tried to focus his gaze on the formation plate in the woman's hand, only to find his vision impeded by the piercing spiritual light emanating from it. Without any time for further thought, he activated his bright-sight spirit eyes to their maximal extent, thereby allowing him to instantly glean the situation within the formation plate. Golden seal text, Han Li exclaimed in astonishment. Even though he didn't recognize so much as a single one of the golden runes that had surfaced over the formation plate, he could tell from their form and fearsome spiritual power that this was clearly the golden seal text, which was even more mysterious than spiritual power. There were extremely few high-grade cultivators, even in the spirit realm, that understood and were capable of using such a legendary text. The woman seemed to have sensed Han Li's gaze, and she turned to him with a dainty smile, before suddenly raising the formation plate high up into the air with both hands. An incredible scene ensued. The formation plate began to rotate in midair amid a layer of brilliant golden light. A fist-sized golden ball of light suddenly materialized at its center, and a burst of astonishing spiritual pressure abruptly erupted into the air. The dark clouds in the sky immediately began to tumble and surge as howling winds swept through the air. At the same time, the 36 formation flags all began emitting the roars of dragons and tigers as countless specks of light of different colors emerged nearby, then converged toward the flags in unison. All of a sudden, brilliant spiritual light radiated forth from all 36 flags. In the next instant, 36 dazzling pillars of light shot forth in unison, all of which were around the same thickness as a large bowl. These pillars of light climbed upward and disappeared into the dark clouds up above in a flash. All of a sudden, a deafening thunderclap rang out from within the dark clouds, following which a massive formation of light that was around 1,000 feet in size slowly emerged. The center of this formation was situated directly above the formation plate down below, and it suddenly expelled a thin golden light that disappeared into the ball of golden light within the formation plate. The golden ball immediately rose up into the air, heading directly toward the center of the massive formation. At this point, Han Li was already completely flabbergasted. The woman hadn't revealed to him what abilities this formation possessed, and had only asked him to buy her time. Even though the formation was still yet to reveal its true power, it was most definitely an immensely powerful formation, one that far exceeded the might of the Oriat sword formation. At this moment, the woman was sweating profusely as she struggled to hold the formation plate aloft. Her face had been drained off all color, and she appeared to be on the verge of collapse. The golden ball of light was finally sucked into the center of the formation, and the two combined as one amid a loud buzzing sound. The light formation was already astonishingly huge, yet its area swelled by severalfold once again with the injection of the golden ball of light, and it covered virtually the entire sky. The spiritual pressure emanating from the formation was so devastating that even Han Li's body swayed involuntarily, and he was forced to stumble back a few steps. At the same time, the two Xianxia monarchs that were several thousand kilometers away suddenly exchanged a shocked glance. Neither of them uttered a single word, but they both disappeared into space in unison. At this moment, the two demented minions finally charged out of the Oriat sword formation, before pouncing toward Han Li and the woman with crimson light flashing from their bodies. Han Li's heart jolted with shock, and just as he was about to hurl his lightning beads at them, two pillars of white light were suddenly blasted forth from the light formation up above, striking the two demented minions in a flash. The two formidable demented minions abruptly disappeared amid the pillars of white light. That's a teleportation formation. Han Li was immediately able to identify that the two demented minions had been killed. Instead, they'd been teleported to some unknown location as soon as they were struck by the white light. A smug smile appeared on the woman's face, and she was just about to say something to Han Li when her expression suddenly changed drastically. She then hurriedly flew up toward the light formation in the sky as a streak of light. Han Li was rather bewildered upon seeing this, but after quickly assessing the situation, he also followed along after the woman as a streak of azure light. Right at this moment, spatial fluctuations suddenly erupted from two different spots in the air around 1,000 feet away, and two massive humanoid figures emerged out of thin air just in time to see what Han Li and the woman were doing. The two massive Xianxia monarchs immediately let loose thunderous roars of rage. One of them threw a fist at Han Li and the woman from afar while crimson light flashed from the hand of its companion, and it sent a vast expanse of light sweeping through the air. The woman had already flown into the center of the massive formation, and the buzzing sound emanating from it suddenly intensified by severalfold. At the same time, violent spatial fluctuations appeared around it. The space enshrouded under the entire massive formation began to warp and deform, clearly indicating the initiation of a teleportation sequence. In the instant that the demented minions had charged out of the sword formation, it had reverted back to 72 golden swords and disappeared into Han Li's body in a flash. However, due to the twisting and warping of space, Han Li's speed of flight was forcibly halved. Han Li's expression changed slightly, and before he had a chance to activate his thunderstorm wings, the attacks from the Xianxia monarchs were already upon him. The fist that had been thrown from afar had conjured up a massive green fist projection amid a rumbling boom. The fist projection was striking directly below the formation of light, and Han Li was caught right in its crosshairs. Han Li knew that if he didn't take care of this attack first, there would be no way for him to escape. As such, he took a deep breath and raised both hands up into the air, upon which a dozen or so golden and silver beads immediately shot forth. Only then did he flap his thunderstorm wings and disappear on the spot. In the next instant, he appeared right beneath the center of the formation before disappearing into it without any hesitation. At this moment, the vast expanse of crimson light that was flashing through the air also struck a corner of the massive formation in a violent manner. At the same time, golden and silver beads also struck the fist projection, and both exploded in unison. Scintillating crimson light flashed, causing the entire formation to tremor and ripple. Letter 1D4BB, letter 1D45F, letter 1D626, letter 1D626, letter 1D638, letter 212F, letter 1D624, letter 1D630, letter 1D62E. Meanwhile, an earth-shattering boom erupted as a massive golden and silver lightning cloud exploded, spreading over an area with a radius in excess of 1,000 kilometers, sweeping up powerful gale-force winds in the process. The gusts of fierce winds drowned out everything in the blink of an eye. Spatial fluctuations erupted on the edges of the lightning cloud, and the two Xianxia monarchs appeared once again. The power of the lightning beads was akin to that of the full-power attacks unleashed by a dozen or so spatial tempering cultivators, and even they didn't dare to barge recklessly into the lightning cloud. As such, they could only give up on their plan to teleport over and drag Han Li and the woman directly out of the formation. During the brief span of time bought by the lightning cloud, brilliant light erupted from the formation in the sky. Following a few erratic flashes, the entire formation crumbled and disappeared. The two Xianxia monarchs joined forces to dispel the lightning cloud before appearing at the center of where the formation once was. At that location, there was only a white formation plate drifting in midair, riddled with cracks and completely devoid of spiritual qi. One of the Xianxia monarchs grabbed the formation plate and inspected it for a while with a dark expression before tossing it to its companion. There's a hint of true spirit qi in there. Looks like we underestimated these two human cultivators. Who would have thought that they'd possess such an extraordinary long-distance teleportation treasure? The second Xianxia monarch sighed after examining the formation plate. I didn't expect this either. However, thankfully, my final attack shook their teleportation formation, so it's yet to be seen whether they can teleport safely away from here. Perhaps they'll fall into some spatial rift and disappear from this realm along the way. Indestructible monarch chuckled coldly. Chakravarti nodded with furrowed brows and replied, "We can only hope for that to be the case. Our top priority now is to find those demented minions. I have no idea where they were teleported to, and it may be rather difficult to recover them. It's no big deal. Our demented minions are quite intelligent, so they'll find a way to come back to us unless they were teleported to other continents. We should establish a set of conditions for the united army we were discussing earlier. Otherwise..." The two Xianxia monarchs were quite surprised that Han Li's duo was able to get away, but they quickly moved on to more important matters. Meanwhile, the Xianxia tribe army that was countless kilometers away from them were still marching toward Deep Heaven City. Han Li was struck by a splitting headache as well as a rush of intense dizziness. To experience such a severe reaction with his current body indicated that the teleportation he had just undergone had to have been a super long-distance one. Han Li only slowly opened his eyes after keeping them closed for a long while, then cast his gaze around him to survey his surroundings. He was currently situated atop a pile of rocks, all of which were of different sizes, but they were all round and grayish-white in color. There were swaths of gray mist around him, severely hampering visibility. His head was also ringing incessantly, and he found himself unable to expel his spiritual sense from his body, suggesting that there was either a restriction here or he had yet to recover from that bout of long-distance teleportation. Han Li furrowed his brows as he flexed his neck from side to side, and blue light flashed within his eyes at the same time. All of a sudden, his expression changed slightly as he made a hand seal, rising up into the air as a streak of azure light before plunging into the mist. Around 5 minutes later, Han Li appeared beside a small creek that was several tens of feet wide with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked down at the remarkably clear water of the spring at his feet, and his eyes narrowed slightly. He made a grabbing motion downward, and a small ball of water was drawn toward him before hovering above his palm. Han Li examined the ball of water for a while, and after ascertaining that it was safe for consumption, he drank the entire thing. The water was very sweet and pure, and Han Li nodded with contentment. Just as he was about to procure some more water from the creek, he suddenly raised his eyebrows before clenching his fist and lashing out at the space behind him. A burst of enormous power was blasted forth, striking something with a resounding boom and causing the mist to tumble and churn. The sound of stumbling footsteps and muffled harumphs also rang out immediately thereafter. Han Li's body blurred, and he turned around in a wraith-like manner before sweeping a sleeve through the mist. A gust of fierce winds erupted from within his sleeve, sweeping aside the gray mist for several hundred feet in front of him, revealing a monster that was around 10 feet tall. Despite Han Li's vast reserves of knowledge and experience, even he couldn't help but falter at the sight of this monster. This monster had an extremely peculiar appearance with small eyes and a long mouth. It had the head of a pig and the body of a human with an azure turtle shell locked tightly around its upper body. The monster was currently lying spread-eagled on its back, having clearly just been knocked to the ground by Han Li's punch, and it grunting incessantly as it tried to struggle to its feet with all its might. However, due to the combination of its bulbous shell and the fact that its limbs were less than half the length of normal human limbs, it was unable to immediately roll over, and it was stuck on its back just like a massive turtle. Pig Tortoise Demon. For some reason, that peculiar name surfaced in Han Li's mind, and he couldn't help but chuckle. The aura emanating from the pig demon's body wasn't very powerful, only comparable to that of a human chi condensation cultivator. Han Li was naturally quite relieved upon making this observation, yet at the same time, he was a little perplexed about how this pig demon had managed to withstand the power of his attack. He cast his gaze toward the turtle shell on the pig demon's body to discover a fist indentation that was around an inch deep on the abdominal part of the shell. A hint of surprise appeared on Han Li's face as he made a grabbing motion. Brilliant spiritual light flashed as a massive azure hand that was around 10 feet in size appeared above the pig demon. The hand reached down and grabbed the edge of its shell to hoist the pig demon up from the ground. Before Han Li had a chance to carefully examine the turtle shell, the pig demon suddenly withdrew its body in a remarkably agile manner and slipped out of the shell. In doing so, it revealed itself to be a brown boar, and it immediately fled into the mist. In the blink of an eye, the empty turtle shell was the only thing locked in the grasp of the massive azure hand. Han Li's lips twitched in a rather speechless manner. From the agility displayed by the pig demon during its escape, it had merely been feigning clumsiness earlier in order to lure Han Li into a false sense of security. This pig demon didn't appear to be very smart, but it was very cunning and most likely possessed a high level of intelligence. However, Han Li naturally couldn't be bothered to chase after a chi condensation stage demon beast. Instead, he began to examine the turtle's shell as a hint of surprise gradually appeared on his face. This is only the shell of a turtle that's lived for several hundred years. To think that it can withstand a punch from me. What kind of spirit turtle could possess such an extraordinary shell? Han Li murmured to himself, and after a brief hesitation, he stowed the shell away into his storage bracelet. After that, Han Li didn't take any risks by venturing elsewhere. He merely sat down with his legs crossed beside the small creek and closed his eyes to meditate. The creek beside him flowed in a soundless manner, but the surrounding mist was gradually beginning to thin out. After a while, when the mist had almost completely dissipated, a group of beasts that resembled deers but also resembled horses gathered beside the creek. Some of them began to drink from the creek, while a few of the infantile calves that were only around a foot or so in length played with one another. Due to the fact that Han Li had completely withdrawn his aura and was sitting as still as a statue, the beasts failed to notice him, and one of the calves even crashed directly into Han Li. The calf seemed to have detected something, and it turned around to appraise Han Li with a pair of beautiful blue eyes. It then wailed in a few circles around him before inching its furry head closer to Han Li's face. After sniffing at his face for a while, it stuck out its pink little tongue and took a tentative lick. All of a sudden, Han Li opened his eyes without any premonition. The calf was quite alert, and it immediately sprang back to try and flee. However, right in that instant, green light flashed and a fragrant pill shot forth from Han Li's sleeve, entering the calf's mouth with unerring accuracy. At the same time, Han Li's faint voice sounded within the calf's ear. Perhaps our meeting was a design of fate. In that case, I'll bestow this spirit pill upon you. As for whether you'll actually be able to attain intelligence, that'll be up to you. Despite the fact that Han Li had spoken in a rather gentle voice, the small calf was startled into letting loose a panicked sheep-like cry. All of the mature beasts nearby were immediately also alerted to Han Li's existence, and they immediately charged forward, shielding the calves behind them while aiming their sharp horns at Han Li in a wary manner. However, Han Li merely remained seated on the spot. After taking another calm glance at that small calf, he closed his eyes and paid no further heed to this pack of beasts. The beasts could see that Han Li bore no ill will, but they still slowly retreated into the distance while guarding their young. Not long after that, the beasts raced away into and disappeared from view. Han Li sat beside the creek for a while longer and only rose up into the air after the mist had completely dissipated. At this point, both his magic power and spiritual sense had completely recovered. However, he was only able to expel his spiritual sense from his body to a distance of under 10 kilometers, clearly indicating that he was being severely restricted. As such, he decided to continue to fly higher into the air, then use his bright-sight spirit eyes to survey his surroundings rather than relying on his spiritual sense. In doing so, he would be able to examine a much larger area. After rising up to an altitude of over 10,000, blue light flashed through Han Li's eyes as he quickly cast his gaze around him. The same grayish-white rocks stretched for as far as his eyes could see in the eastern and western directions, but there was a smudge of green around 15 kilometers to the south. It appeared that there was a set of mountain ranges there. To the north, there was a vast expanse of water attribute spiritual chi, which suggested that there was a large river or ocean situated in that direction. After a brief hesitation, Han Li flew toward the north as a streak of azure light. With Han Li's current speed of flight, he naturally covered this distance in a very short time. His eyes lit up as a boundless ocean appeared before him, but the seawater was slightly strange in that it was crimson in color. On the shore, there were around 1,000 massive turtles of different sizes resting on the beach. The largest of these turtles were around 30 to 40 feet in size, while the smallest were only around half a foot. All of them were half buried in the sand, resting in a lazy manner. In the air above the ocean, there was a flock of strange crimson birds with sharp long beaks circling around. One of them would occasionally dive into the ocean to grab large fish from the seawater with their beaks and talons, then hurl the fish high up into the air, where they would instantly be devoured by the flock of birds up above. Han Li looked on expressionlessly, and after a while, a thought suddenly occurred to him as he abruptly looked up into the sky. There were still 7 scorching suns hanging up there, but they seemed to be slightly smaller than before and were a little blurry. It appeared that he had been teleported somewhere extremely far away from the 3 human regions. Otherwise, the suns in the sky wouldn't be exhibiting such a noticeable change. Thankfully, Han Li had already guessed this from the level of discomfort he had experienced as a result of the bout of teleportation. As such, he wasn't all that surprised, and he turned his attention to the turtles down below. Aside from the turtles on the beach, there was also a large number of vacant turtle shells spread all over the nearby beach, and there appeared to be several thousands of them. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly as he flipped over his palm to summon the azure turtle shell that the pig demon had been wearing. He compared this shell to the turtle shells down below, and a hint of surprise quickly appeared in his eyes. At first glance, the turtle shells down below seemed to be extremely similar to the one in Han Li's hand, and there were many that were even larger than the one that Han Li was holding. However, Han Li was able to immediately glean the difference between the turtle shells. Even though the shell in his hand wasn't very large, every single line on the shell was a faint silver in color, while the lines on the turtle shells down below were all white and completely mundane. Han Li cocked his head to the side and contemplated this momentarily before making a grabbing motion toward one of the turtle shells down below, upon which it flew directly up toward him. Han Li unleashed a casual strike toward it, and the shell exploded into powder amid a resounding boom. A stir ran through the turtles down below, and many of them stuck out their heads to look up into the air. However, it seemed that they didn't regard Han Li as much of a threat as most of them withdrew their heads into their shells again and continued to lie around in leisure. This really is no ordinary turtle shell. However, this turtle shell most likely did come from this place, Han Li murmured to himself. Azure light flashed as Han Li slowly descended toward the ground. At the same time, he forcibly released his spiritual sense to enshroud an area with a radius of several kilometers, carefully searching for something. After a while, Han Li abruptly opened his eyes and shot forth through the air as a streak of azure light, quickly covering a distance of several kilometers along the beach before returning. However, there were 3 more giant turtle shells hovering behind him, one of which was around 40 to 50 feet in size, one of which was around 10 feet, and the final one was only around several feet. All of these turtle shells also silver lines on them, but the shades of silver were a little different. On the smallest shell, the lines appeared to be constructed from pure silver and were shimmering with light. The shade of silver on the shell that was around 10 feet in size was around the same as one that Han Li already had, and as for the largest of the turtle shells, the lines on that one were barely silver at all. All 3 of these turtle shells were buried quite deep into the ground, and if it weren't for the fact that Han Li's spiritual sense was able to penetrate directly into the sand, he most likely wouldn't have been able to find these 3 shells. At this moment, Han Li paused in midair and waved a hand toward the turtle shells, upon which all 3 of them organized themselves into a row in front of him. Han Li flicked his fingers, and several streaks of azure sword chi flashed through the air, striking the 3 turtle shells and leaving indentations of different depths. The largest turtle shell was completely punctured, whereas the hole on the smallest one was only around half an inch deep, and the hole on the one that was around 10 feet in size was around 3 to 4 inches deep. Han Li nodded upon seeing this, before rustling his sleeve to send forth a burst of azure light. All 3 turtle shells rotated within the azure light, and instantly shrank drastically before being drawn into Han Li's grasp. Spiritual light flashed from his hand, and all 3 shells were stowed away into his storage bracelet. Right at this moment, the birds flying over the ocean suddenly began to let loose cries of alarm. Han Li immediately raised his head to assess the situation, upon which his heart jolted with shock. On the surface of the ocean, a massive demonic creature that was around 100 feet in length had appeared. It had the upper body of a dark-skinned male human with a bone trident in each hand. It had a set of sinister facial features, and its lower body was identical to that of a giant octopus. The massive tentacles connected to its torso peeked out of the surface of the ocean from time to time. This demonic creature opened its mouth to blast forth bursts of inky black light, sweeping up hundreds of those strange crimson birds before drawing them into its mouth as if it were enjoying a delicious meal. The birds struggled with all their might within the black light but were completely powerless to resist, and most of them were devoured in the blink of an eye. Strangely enough, the turtles on the beach remained completely unflustered as they continued to lie in the sand, and the massive demonic creature showed no intention of attacking the turtles either. Han Li was rather surprised to see this. The massive demonic creature seemed to be comparable in power to an 8th-grade demon beast, so Han Li naturally wasn't fearful toward it. He merely looked on with furrowed brows, attempting to identify this creature. In reality, the difference between the terms demon beast and ancient beast was rather vague in the spirit realm. To the humans of the spirit realm, ancient beasts usually referred to the native beast-type beings of the spirit realm, whereas demon beasts referred to the demonic cultivators that had ascended from lower realms, as well as their descendants that continued to live in the spirit realm. Most ancient beasts were unable to attain high levels of intelligence, but all of them had one or more abilities that they were endowed with from birth without requiring cultivation to attain, and they were all extremely powerful. In contrast, all demon beasts were generally capable of attaining intelligence unless they had special inheritances or were one of the rare species that were unable to attain intelligence. However, the abilities that they possessed were usually far inferior in power to that of ancient beasts. Of course, there was no strict difference between ancient beasts and demon beasts. On the occasions when some of the ancient beasts dwelling near the human and demon territories attained intelligence, they would often lead their brethren to join the demon race, voluntarily join the demon race. There were also ancient beasts that caught the eyes of human and demonic cultivators, in which they would be forcibly tamed and domesticated. As such, Han Li wasn't all that surprised to see this monster, and he merely hovered in the air in silence. After a while, all of the birds in the sky had been devoured by the massive demonic creature, and it slapped the surface of the ocean with its massive tentacles in excitement before suddenly twisting around and catching sight of Han Li. Han Li had withdrawn his aura this entire time, and the demon beast had failed to notice his presence. However, the events that unfolded next came as quite a surprise to Han Li. As soon as the demonic creature caught sight of Han Li, an expression of shock and horror appeared on its face. After letting loose a low roar, it transformed into a streak of black chi and immediately disappeared into the ocean. Immediately thereafter, countless bursts of inky black mist erupted from the seabed, making the seawater in an area of several kilometers extremely murky and opaque, thereby bringing visibility down to zero. However, that wasn't enough to stop Han Li. Blue light flashed in his eyes and his gaze instantly pierced through the black mist, allowing him to glean the situation down below. The massive demonic creature had already plunged deep into the ocean and was fleeing with all its might. Han Li harumphed coldly, and he was just about to flap his thunderstorm wings to give chase when a long roar suddenly rang out from the ocean's depths. The sound was like a prolonged rumbling thunderclap that was quite dull and menacing. Immediately thereafter, a burst of powerful demonic chi suddenly emerged in the ocean close to 10 kilometers away, and its power seemed to be comparable to that of a deity transformation cultivator. Han Li faltered slightly upon hearing this roar. He cast his gaze into the distance in the direction where the roar had originated from, and a hint of hesitation appeared on his face. Moments later, the burst of astonishing demonic chi within the ocean joined together with the octopus demon, before the two continued further into the ocean without any hesitation. Han Li shook his head as the thunderstorm wings on his back vanished. He didn't fear any deity transformation stage demon beasts, but he didn't want to enter a reckless feud with such a powerful creature having just arrived in this unfamiliar place. After staring out at the ocean for a while longer, Han Li abruptly turned around and flew toward the south. A short while later, a streak of azure light appeared over a massive set of lush mountain ranges that stretched as far as the eyes could see. The azure light receded, and Han Li was revealed. Looking at the mountain ranges from afar, Han Li could see that it was filled with countless tall and steep mountains that were clumped together in a dense bunch. Even prior to entering the mountain ranges, Han Li could sense a vicious aura emanating from it, and that was rather surprising to him. However, the spiritual qi within the mountain ranges was also far more abundant than outside. Just this factor alone prompted Han Li to enter the mountain ranges without much further hesitation. In order to draw as little attention as possible, Han Li intentionally slowed down and flew at a very low altitude. One mountain after another flashed past, and throughout this entire process, Han Li was constantly surveying his surroundings, as well as unleashing his spiritual sense to encompass an area of several kilometers. Having flown just over 500 kilometers into the mountain ranges, an expression of surprise and elation suddenly appeared on Han Li's face. He discovered that this stretch of mountain ranges was riddled with spirit herbs and spirit trees. Even though most of them were low-grade spirit medicines and situated in steep and perilous locations, the sheer quantity present was still very encouraging to Han Li. After all, he was only passing by in a brisk manner. If he were to stop and conduct a thorough search, he would definitely reap some worthwhile rewards. There were presumably many high-grade spirit medicines that could be procured from these mountain ranges. Aside from spirit medicines, the number of beast packs within the mountains also exceeded Han Li's expectations. During his travels, Han Li had even witnessed a grueling battle between two beast packs. Just as he was flying over a rather flat col between two massive mountains, he was suddenly greeted by raucous ape cries and thunderous beastly roars. Immediately thereafter, many white-furred giant apes that were over 20 feet tall suddenly emerged from one mountain, led by a giant ape with shimmering golden fur. They were wielding wooden sticks, stone clubs, and other crude weapons of that nature as they charged directly toward the neighboring mountain. From the other mountain, a pack of ferocious beasts with cow heads and lion bodies emerged, and they were led by a giant beast of the same species that was around twice as large as its brethren. The two packs of beasts clashed, and a ferocious battle immediately ensued. All of the giant apes had extraordinary jumping power and immense strength, while their beastly opponents possessed sharp fangs and claws, as well as thick skin and robust bodies. The two armies were evenly matched. What caught Han Li's attention was that the leaders of the respective armies seemed to have attained intelligence, thereby allowing them to gain influence among their packs. Both of them seemed to be third or fourth grade demon beasts, and the golden ape was able to gain a slight advantage with its superior agility, but the leader of the opposing beast pack was no slouch either. After battling for over an hour, both beast packs were growing quite exhausted. In the end, their respective leaders let loose long howls, upon which the armies retreated back to the mountains where they had come from. However, there were many bodies strewn all over the col in the aftermath of the battle, and those bodies attracted a flock of hideous twin-headed scavenging birds that enjoyed a grand feast. Han Li hid high up in the sky, surveying the battle that had unfolded down below with a hint of intrigue in his eyes. The giant apes fought in a rather strategic and organized manner, and a thought occurred to Han Li upon seeing this. Aside from that, as Han Li continued deeper into the mountain ranges, he discovered some other strange beasts along the way. Atop the mountains with the most abundant spiritual qi, there were even 6th or 7th grade demon beasts lurking. Han Li paid no heed to these demon beasts as they posed no threat to him anyway, and he continued to fly deeper into the mountain ranges. This set of mountain ranges was far larger than Han Li had anticipated. After flying for 2 full months, he still hadn't emerged on the other side, and that was very surprising to him. Just as he was hesitating about whether he should return the way he had come, he suddenly caught sight of a boundless black sea of mist up ahead that enshrouded countless mountain peaks. Han Li stopped near the edge of the sea of mist and unleashed his spirit eyes to assess the scenes within the mist with an indecisive look on his face. He could clearly see that there wasn't even a single blade of grass growing on the area enshrouded under this black mist, and even the rocks and soil on the ground were extremely dry and cracked. In the face of such a bizarre situation, Han Li naturally wasn't going to recklessly barge in. Instead, he made a grabbing motion toward the small tree down below. The tree was plucked up from the ground, and its trunk fell into Han Li's grasp. Brilliant golden light erupted all over Han Li's body as he hurled the tree through the air in a violent manner. The tree shot forth like an arrow, speeding toward the black mist that was situated several kilometers away. Bright blue light erupted from Han Li's eyes as he stared at the small tree with rapt focus. The scenes that unfolded next immediately made Han Li's expression darken slightly. In the instant that the small tree flew into the black mist, the entire tree wilted before instantly being reduced to dust. Han Li surveyed his surroundings, and after a brief pause to contemplate the situation, he suddenly flew off to the side. He was planning to try and skirt around the border of the black mist in search of a way out. After around half a day, Han Li appeared near a small mountain situated on the border of the sea of black mist, and he was appraising one of the faces of the mountain with a grim expression. This mountain was only several thousand feet tall, but the side that was facing Han Li was extraordinarily flat and smooth, as if it had been flattened by some kind of powerful technique. On the smooth surface of the mountain face, there were 3 massive crimson characters inscribed, each of which was several tens of feet in size. During his time in Deep Heaven City, Han Li had diligently researched the ancient texts of both the human and demon races, as well as even the text used by several of the nearby foreign races. However, he had never seen these 3 characters before, so this was most likely the foreign text that the human and demon races had never come into contact with. Even though he couldn't understand what had been inscribed, the strokes of the characters were extremely sharp and were emanating a vastly intimidating, baleful aura. A cultivator with an inferior cultivation base would most likely be forced into retreat at the mere sight of this mountain face. Of course, at Han Li's current power level, this amount of baleful aura was naturally not enough to faze him. Upon closer examination, he discovered that large sections of the mountain showed signs of erosion, and even some sections of the 3 characters had become rather blurry and indistinct. Han Li silently pondered the situation for a while before continuing to fly along the border of the Black Sea of Mist. After flying for several days, he finally emerged from the mountain ranges. However, before he had a chance to exult, he was completely stumped by the new terrain that he found himself in. This was another beach with crimson seawater crashing relentlessly into the nearby rocks. Han Li stroked his chin and stood in midair, appraising the sea in silence. After a long while, he suddenly flew back the way that he had come, skirting around the border of the sea of black mist toward the opposite direction. On this occasion, Han Li arrived at another seaside cliff after over 10 days of flight. Han Li could finally confirm that he was situated on a colossal island. This was most definitely the largest island he had ever seen. Furthermore, this island was most likely rectangular in shape. One side was the side that Han Li was situated at, while the other side was enshrouded under that black mist. Initially, Han Li had attempted to fly around the sea of black mist to see what lay on the other end of the island. However, there was no sign that the sea of black mist was drawing to a conclusion even after an entire month of travel, and Han Li could only give up before doubling back. It appeared that this wasn't a truly isolated island. Otherwise, this island was large enough to be considered as an independent small continent. However, regardless of whether this was truly an island or not, it made no difference to him. Letter 1D4F, letter 1D4FB, letter 1D486, letter 1D65A, letter 1D498, letter 1D4E, letter 1D4FF. Letter 1D658, letter 1D4F8, letter 1D662. Aside from the sea of black mist that was rather peculiar, there seemed to be no excessively powerful beings on the entire island. Furthermore, spiritual qi was very abundant in these mountain ranges, so it was definitely an ideal venue for cultivation. However, what was really perplexing to Han Li was that there were deity transformation stage demon beasts in the ocean surrounding the island, yet there were no powerful demon beasts that had actually taken over the island. Furthermore, that octopus demon was already an 8th grade metamorphosis stage demon beast, but it had fled in sheer horror at the sight of Han Li, leaving him quite confused and searching for answers. Han Li pondered this notion for a long time, but couldn't arrive at any concrete conclusions. However, in order to ensure his safety, he decided to spend some time to scour the area surrounding the island in search of powerful beings that could potentially pose a threat to him. Thus, during the next month, Han Li searched carefully through the close to 10,000 kilometers of the ocean around the half of the island that he was situated on. In the end, he discovered nothing else aside from a few completely worthless barren islands. There were a few powerful demon beasts in the ocean, but even the most powerful ones among them were only comparable to that octopus monster that Han Li had encountered on the previous occasion. Most of them didn't possess much intelligence either, so there was no need for him to worry about them at all. As such, Han Li was feeling quite reassured as he returned to the mountain ranges on the gargantuan island, preparing to enter a period of peaceful cultivation. He carefully selected a mountain with the most abundant spiritual qi to carve out a massive cave abode for himself, and set up many restrictions before moving in. This cave abode was quite close to the border of the mountain ranges and over 10 days of flight away from the Sea of Black Mist. As such, even if the Sea of Black Mist did present any dangers, they would be unable to affect him, and he would have ample time to react. Han Li planted all of the spirit medicines he had taken with him in the medicine garden of his cave abode, then set to work within his secret chamber. Han Li's storage bracelet slipped off his wrist before circling around in the air. Azure light flashed as 9 green-eyed true-toed beast corpses appeared on the ground before him. 2 of the bodies were quite large, while the other 7 were relatively small, and they almost took up the entire secret chamber. All of the carcasses had talismans of various colors plastered onto them, in order to prevent decomposition, as well as to greatly nullify the effect of the spirit blood. Han Li took a deep breath before pointing at the storage bracelet to produce a pristine white jade bottle, which was instantly caught in his grasp. He then pointed at one of the smaller carcasses on the ground with his other hand, and it immediately hovered into the air. He flicked a finger gently toward it, and azure light flashed as a streak of sword qi punctured a thumb-sized hole into its body. Moments later, a viscous shimmering liquid began to flow out from that hole, and it was silvery white in color. White light flashed, and the jade vial appeared beneath the holy, upon which the silver liquid instantly dripped into the opening of the vial as a silver line. A peculiar scene then ensued. As the silver liquid flowed into the vial, the frog's body began to shrink and dry out. There wasn't much silver liquid that flowed out from the carcass, and it ran dry in mere moments, but the body shrank almost by half. Han Li then opened his mouth to blast forth a silver fireball that struck the carcass, following which the body was instantly reduced to a pile of ashes. However, after the silver flames dissipated, many more rice-sized droplets of silver liquid appeared in the air. Han Li had used the spirit engulfing heavenly flames, powers of yin and yang, to force out all of the residual blood lurking within the frog's body. He rustled his sleeve, and a burst of azure light swept forth, bringing all of the silver droplets together to form a fist-sized silver ball before stowing it away into the jade vial. Han Li was unable to synthesize nor nurture the production of more spirit blood from these true-toed beasts, so he naturally didn't want to waste even a single drop. Thus, Han Li repeated the process with all of the other carcasses before him, filling several jade vials with this legendary true-toed blood. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief, seemingly quite pleased with his work. Even though he had extracted the true-toed blood, he wasn't in a hurry to refine the true-toed liquid. Instead, he had to raise his cultivation base to the pinnacle of the mid-deity transformation stage and break through this bottleneck first. Come to think of it, his decision to walk the path of simultaneous cultivation really did seem to be the correct one. Due to his powerful body and the number of pills that he possessed, he should be able to easily reach that cultivation base in a mere century or even several decades, whereas it would take other cultivators several centuries to do the same. The only problem was that breaking through the bottleneck would most likely require some more time. Thus, after releasing a few giant ape puppets, Han Li also released his second nascent soul and made it responsible for nurturing and taking care of everything within the cave abode. After that, he closed the doors to his secret chamber and focused wholeheartedly on his cultivation. With an ample supply of pills and dragon-scale fruits, as well as the enhancement effect from the bone-tempering arts, Han Li's magic power became more abundant by the day, and his body was also growing steadily more powerful. During this time, aside from cultivating the Provenance True Devil arts, he also refined his 2 hands by fusing them with the Divine Essence Effused Mountain and the Unbroken Sync Devils. After that, he began to fuse his 72 Azure Bamboo Cloudswarm Sword one by one into various important sections of his bone structure, according to the instructions provided by the 100 Meridian Refinement Mantra. If he could succeed in this process, his defensive prowess would be enhanced to an incredible level, particularly when using the Provenance True Devil arts as well. Even if he were to face a direct attack from a spatial tempering cultivator, he'd be able to take it with his body alone and remain completely unscathed. Of course, the refinement of his two hands was a little different, and refining the important sections of his bone structure was naturally even more complex, so this was naturally going to be a very time-consuming process. Letter 1D5F3, letter 1D4-2B, letter 1D6AT, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D6A0, letter 1D6AT, letter 1D5F0, letter 1D5FC, letter 1D5FA. Thus, the doors to Han Li's secret chamber remained tightly shut for an extended period of time. At intervals of several years, the second nascent soul would transform into a projection and enter through the wall to supply Han Li with some spirit medicines and spirit fruits. Months and years flew by one after another, and 60 years passed in the blink of an eye. One day, two balls of demonic chi, one black and one yellow, appeared on a small mountain less than 10 kilometers away from Han Li's cave abode. The two demonic creatures within the balls of demonic chi seemed to be discussing something with one another. Within the black chi, there was a pair of blinking silver eyes, while only a single shimmering crimson eye could be seen within the yellow chi. The two demonic beings seemed to have seen through the illusionary formation that Han Li had set up outside the gates of his cave abode, and they were carefully appraising the situation from afar. The two demons seemed to be quite wary of Han Li's cave abode and didn't immediately spring into action. Instead, they flew away after a brief conversation. 3 days later, several balls of demonic chi arrived in the air outside Han Li's cave abode once again. These demons no longer concealed themselves, sweeping up gusts of demonic winds with reckless abandon instead. Thousands of ferocious beasts and strange insects had also appeared on the ground below, and it appeared that they were planning to launch a direct attack against Han Li's cave abode. The demons hovering in the sky were also all of different forms. One of them was a giant three-headed python with two small heads and one large head, giving off quite a sinister appearance. The second one was a massive wild boar that was 60 to 70 feet in size, with a pair of huge shimmering silver tusks that looked as if they'd been constructed from pure silver. As for the final two demon beasts, they were rather similar to the two demonic leaders that Han Li had seen during the battle between the two beast packs many years ago. One of them was a shimmering golden ape that was several tens of feet tall with a giant black trident in its hand. The other was a smaller beast with the head of a cow and the body of a lion, but its body was also several feet long, and it was entirely green as if it had been carved out of green jade. If Han Li were here, he'd immediately be able to identify that these demons were all 6th and 7th grade demon beasts that he'd once detected in the nearby mountain ranges. Among these demon beasts, the most powerful was the one with the cow's head and the lion's body. It was already at the pinnacle of the 7th grade, and was one step away from becoming a metamorphosis stage demon beast. These demon beasts had banded together to attack his cave abode for some reason. Han Li was currently in seclusion and paid no heed to what was happening in the outside world, but the restrictions set up by a deity transformation cultivator like him certainly couldn't be bypassed by demon beasts of this caliber. The beast packs and insect swarms advanced onward following instructions from the demon beasts in the sky above, cheering toward the outermost layer of the illusionary formation, thereby instantly triggering the defensive spell formations that Han Li had prepared. Azure light abruptly flashed, following which howling winds swept through the air, whipping up violent sandstorms. Hundreds of massive rocks whistled forth along with the wind, instantly crushing hordes of ferocious beasts into piles of mincemeat amid a series of earth-shattering booms. The beast packs were instantly plunged into complete chaos and disarray, and some of them were even trying to flee the scene. However, the cow-headed demon up above suddenly opened its mouth to let loose a long, menacing cry upon seeing this. All of the beasts down below were immediately too scared to retreat any further. The other 3 demons also put on displays of intimidation, so the beasts had no choice but to turn around and charge toward the oncoming azure light again. Following another burst of fierce winds, no more giant rocks were hurled at them. Instead, countless azure blades of wind whistled through the air in dense swaths, affording them no avenue for escape or evasion. Thousands of demon beasts were sliced and diced by those blades of wind amid countless howls of anguish and horror. When the gusts of wind subsided once again, only several hundred beasts were remaining. Even though they were yet to attain intelligence, all of them were completely petrified, and they simply couldn't curb their self-preservation instincts any longer as they fled away from Han Li's cave abode. The demon beasts up above glanced at one another upon seeing this. All of a sudden, the cow-headed monster opened its mouth and spoke in a female voice that was very pleasant to the ears. However, it wasn't speaking in any language that was known to the human or demon race. The other three demon beasts also began to converse with one another in the same language. After a while, they seemed to have completed their discussion and decided to pay no heed to the fleeing beasts down below. Instead, they each swept up a burst of demonic wind and sent them whistling down below. Along the way, they combined as one to form a gust of black gale force winds, heading directly toward Han Li's cave abode with devastating force. These demon beasts were attempting to break through the formation Han Li had set up through brute strength. If these demon beasts were all above the 8th grade, then perhaps there was a chance that their actions could bear fruit. However, they were merely a bunch of 6th and 7th grade beings. How could they possibly bypass restrictions set up by a deity transformation cultivator like Han Li? 5-colored light immediately manifested in front of the cave abode before sweeping forth in a forbidding manner. As soon as the black gust of wind came into contact with this 5-colored light, the former was instantly shredded into nothingness. The 4 demon beasts hurriedly hurtled back in retreat before gathering in midair again, looking downward with shock and horror in their eyes. Even though they hadn't directly clashed with this 5-colored light, the fearsome aura imbued within it was enough to render them completely petrified. After holding another short discussion, they also fled the scene as gusts of demonic winds. From that point onward, not only did no demon beasts approach Han Li's cave abode, no living creatures even appeared in a radius of 50 kilometers of his cave abode. The gates of Han Li's cave abode remained shut this entire time and was not opened even once. Time flew by, and over 30 more years passed in a flash. All of a sudden, the loud roar of a dragon erupted from within the secret chamber, following which the doors to the chamber exploded amid a loud rumbling boom. There was a ball of piercing golden light hovering in midair within the secret chamber, and Han Li was seated within this ball of light in a cross-legged manner. A golden projection with 3 heads and 6 arms had appeared behind him. This projection was also situated within the golden light, and its facial features were still blurry and indistinct, but it was clearly looking a lot more substantial than before. It was also seated with its legs crossed like Han Li, and its 6 arms were each making a different type of hand seal. All of a sudden, Han Li and the golden projection tremored in unison, following which a golden ripple proliferated through the surrounding area. It swept toward the nearby walls of the secret chamber, upon which 5-colored light immediately began to flash, and the secret chamber tremored incessantly amid a loud rumbling sound. Within the golden light, a hint of pain crept onto Han Li's face as large beads of sweat covered his entire forehead. The massive ball of golden light began to tremble uncontrollably, and the golden projection within it also became rather blurry as a result. All of a sudden, a crisp crack sounded, and a long and thin line appeared down the center of the golden light as if it were a cracked mirror. As a result, the golden projection instantly shattered and vanished. Han Li exhaled as the agony on his expression disappeared, and silence returned to the secret chamber. After a while, Han Li finally opened his eyes again as a wry smile appeared on his face. This is the 3rd time I've failed in breaking through my bottleneck. It appears that cultivation alone won't do me any good for now. I'll have to find another way, Han Li murmured to himself before abruptly flipping over his hand to produce an object with a black flaming phoenix engraved upon it. This was none other than the small silver vial that contained the 3 black flame pills. Even though black flame pills were known as the best spirit medicine for facilitating a breakthrough for late deity transformation cultivators, it was actually also fit for consumption for mid-deity transformation cultivators as well. It was just that, due to the power of the pill, if it were to be consumed by a cultivator with an insufficient cultivation base or a frail body, it could be burned to death by the pill's black phoenix flames. Han Li possessed the spirit engulfing heavenly flame and was walking the path of simultaneous cultivation, so he naturally had no such qualms. As such, he could consume one of these pills to assist him in breaking through his current bottleneck. However, in doing so, he would have one less black flame pill for when he attempted a breakthrough to the spatial tempering stage, and that would drastically decrease his chances for making a successful breakthrough. After all, black flame pills were extremely rare, and breaking this mid-deity transformation stage bottleneck was merely a matter of time for him. Countless cultivators found themselves stuck at the late deity transformation stage for their entire lives, and spatial tempering cultivators were significantly rarer than deity transformation ones. thereby indicating just how difficult it was to break through that bottleneck. As such, it was best to have as many pills as possible to assist him in that breakthrough. After pondering the issue for a long while, a wry smile appeared on Han Li's face, and he stowed the vial away into this storage bracelet in the end. However, Han Li didn't continue residing in seclusion, either. Instead, he rose to his feet and made his way outside the secret chamber, only to find that a giant ape puppet was already waiting for him there. Han Li raised his eyebrows, yet before he had a chance to say anything, the puppet suddenly strode forward and offered to him a yellow rod-like object in both hands. There were some mysterious green patterns all over the object, and it was none other than that profound heavenly fruit. A solemn expression immediately appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. He made a grabbing motion to draw the fruit into his grasp, and at the same time, brilliant blue light flashed from his eyes, allowing him to see the internal structure of the fruit. As a result, he discovered that the pea-sized ball of light was now around the size of a thumb. Han Li held the fruit in his hand, with a slightly dejected feeling in his heart. Back in Deep Heaven City, Han Li had visited some ancient tome shops in secret to search for information about the profound heavenly fruit. However, what was quite strange was that no matter how old the tomes were, none of them contained any information about this fruit, nor even any related treasures. If it weren't for the fact that they had obtained some information about the profound goddess's palm back in the human world, he most likely wouldn't even know what this profound heavenly fruit was. Even so, the profound heavenly fruit contained the power of laws of a realm, so it was most definitely a treasure that defied the natural order. As such, Han Li naturally never revealed to anyone that he was in possession of this fruit. After injecting spiritual power into the profound heavenly fruit again to no avail, Han Li stroked the object with his finger and fell into deep thought. During these past years, he was constantly pouring that mysterious green liquid into the fruit, yet nothing had happened to it aside from the fact that the white speck of light within it had grown a little in size. He didn't know whether further injection of this liquid would affect any more changes, but it was the only thing that he could do for now. After carefully stowing away the profound heavenly fruit, Han Li paid a visit to his medicine garden. Within the garden, the zoysia dragon fruits and other spirit medicines he'd planted had already matured. The puppets that were looking after the medicine garden had harvested a batch for him and stored these spirit medicines in a storage bracelet. Han Li was naturally ecstatic to see this, and he immediately transferred all of these spirit medicines into his own storage bracelet. After doing all that, Han Li waved a hand toward the puppet that had been accompanying him this entire time. The second nascent soul immediately flew out from the puppet, then disappeared into Han Li's body. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly as if he were processing an influx of information. After a while, he patted the back of his own head to release the second nascent soul back into the puppet. At the same time, he chuckled coldly to himself. To think that a few mid-grade demon beasts would dare to attack my cave abode, looks like they must have found some helpers. Han Li strode directly into a certain hall within his cave abode, within which a massive formation and what appeared to be a sacrificial altar were situated. At the core of the formation sat an octagonal formation plate, and Han Li immediately cast a few incantation seals onto the formation. Following a burst of low buzzing, the entire formation began to glow with white light, following which a silver screen of light appeared above the formation plate. Specks of white light were flashing incessantly, spreading almost the entire light screen. Back when Han Li first constructed this cave abode, he had set up myriad dragon beads in the area surrounding the cave abode for several hundred kilometers. He cast his gaze across the light screen and instantly discovered a few specks of black light situated over 10 kilometers away. Han Li made a hand seal and brilliant azure light erupted from his body. Following a few flashes, he emerged from the cave abode and disappeared into the distance. At Han Li's current incredible speed, such a short distance was covered in the span of just a few breaths. There he discovered a three-headed giant python, a small green beast with a cow's head and a lion's body, as well as an indistinct gray figure hovering in midair, seemingly discussing something with one another. As soon as Han Li appeared in the air above them, the three demon beasts immediately fled the scene, two of them as gusts of demonic winds while the other flew away as a streak of silver light. However, Han Li harumphed coldly as three threads flew forth from within his sleeve. The threads disappeared in a flash before appearing right behind the demonic winds and streak of gray light. Following a flash of bright red light, all three fleeing demons were tightly bound and completely immobilized. The three red threads were withdrawn at his behest, and the three demon beasts were forcibly dragged to him. The small cow-headed beast and the giant python both wore expressions of shock and horror, while the demon beast enshrouded in gray light suddenly said something to him. Han Li had no idea what it was saying, but the tone of its voice indicated that it was delivering a threat of some sort. Han Li's expression darkened as he made a grabbing motion toward the demon beast within the gray light. A vibrant burst of five-colored light swept forth, and the gray light surrounding the demon beast's body faded away like melting snow. The demon beast's true body was drawn into Han Li's grasp, and he pressed 5 fingers onto its head. This demon beast was only around 5 feet in length with shimmering golden scales all over its entire body and 4 limbs sprouting from its abdomen. This was a fish demon with the face of a human male, creating quite a harrowing sight to behold. However, Han Li had seen all manners of demon beasts, and the horrific, unsettling appearance of this 6th-grade fish demon naturally wasn't enough to faze him. Golden light erupted from Han Li's hand, which was pressed against the fish demon's head, and the demon immediately let loose a cry of anguish, then trembled violently before falling unconscious. Han Li had unleashed a soul search technique to source the information that he required directly from this demon's soul. The 3-headed python and the cow-headed beast were trembling uncontrollably upon seeing this, and the horror in their eyes only intensified. With Han Li's current powers, soul-searching 6th-grade demon beast was naturally a simple task. After about 5 minutes, Han Li had gleaned all of the fish demon's memories. Tianpeng race, worship, Lord of Treasured Light. Those terms surfaced in Han Li's mind in quick succession, and he faltered slightly before releasing his 5 fingers as the golden light faded from his palm. The fish demon immediately began to plummet straight downward. The next instant, the red thread around the demon's body swelled to form a thick fiery rope. A ball of crimson flames instantly erupted from the rope, reducing the fish demon to ashes in the blink of an eye. The fiery rope then flashed and returned to Han Li's sleeve, having reverted back to its thread form. Only then did Han Li turn his gaze toward the 2 demons in a completely expressionless manner. After a brief silence, Han Li suddenly spoke in the foreign language used by the demon beasts. "You two sure have some guts. You dared to attack my cave abode just for a few woodbud flowers." After employing the soul search technique, not only had he mastered the language of these demon beasts, he had also gleaned the reason behind these demon beasts' attempts to attack his cave abode. The cow-headed demon clearly possessed the higher level of intelligence among the two, and it replied, "Without the woodbud flowers, our brethren on the hidden Black Mountains won't be able to gather everything required for a worshipful offering. In that case, we'll inevitably be tortured by the Tianpeng race, and our intelligence will be destroyed once again. As such, we had no choice despite knowing how powerful you were." "This is the woodbud flower, right?" Han Li chuckled as he flipped a hand over to produce a bouquet of small purple flower. The appearance of these flowers resembled bells, and they were emitting a peculiar fragrance. The small cow-headed beast stared intently at the bouquet of flowers for a while before replying with a wry smile, "Indeed, that's what we're looking for. There are many spirit mountains within the hidden Black Mountain ranges, but this flower can only be found on the spirit mountain where you reside. This flower doesn't possess much spiritual qi, and it can't be used to refine any good spirit pills, but it's listed as one of the mandatory items that must be offered for worship. That's rather strange. Without it, you would indeed suffer severe punishment at the hands of the Tianpeng race. However, isn't it far too naive and arrogant of you to think that you can conquer my cave abode just because you enlisted the assistance of a sea dragon beast that only just reached the metamorphosis stage? Tusk, and you even promised it 10 pairs of golden marrow crystal insects as reparations. You sure are willing to make large investments. However, according to my knowledge, this type of half-crystal, half-insect creature normally resides deep underground within all types of rare and precious ore, so they're extremely difficult to find. Even if you encounter one, it would immediately die and turn into a crystal after being captured. How are you able to capture golden marrow crystal insects alive?" Han Li asked in a seemingly nonchalant manner. "I can answer that. Back when this land was first discovered by the Tianpeng race, there were beings more powerful than us here in the hidden Black Mountains. However, all of them were slaughtered by the 3 Tianpeng race elders, and we were the only ones allowed to remain here and continue to cultivate, and that was naturally because we possess abilities that allow us to source the items required for their offerings. Otherwise, we would have been killed long ago." The cow-headed beast chuckled coldly. "So you really do have a way to capture golden marrow CR-style insects alive?" Han Li's expression remained unchanged, but he was internally ecstatic. "Indeed, Us luminous beasts are able to identify such insects even among countless ore due to our natural abilities. Furthermore, we have a method to prevent these insects from turning into crystals, the small beast replied in a proud manner. Good, in that case I can let bygones be bygones, and I can even supply woodbud flowers to you. Han Li's expression suddenly eased. Really? What's your condition? The small beast was initially quite elated to hear this, but it quickly realized that there had to be strings attached to this arrangement. It's quite simple. I'll give you as many woodbud flowers as you need, but in exchange, you have to give me a pair of golden marrow crystal insects per 10 flowers. On top of that, I'm also very interested in the golden coral sand that's among the items you have to offer to the Tian Peng race. You can exchange for one woodbud flower per tael of this sand, Han Li replied. Letter 1D4BB, letter 1D633, letter 1D626, letter 1D626, letter 1D638, letter 212F. Letter 1D624, letter 1D45C, letter 1D62E. The crystal insects are among the items that we have to offer, so we don't actually have a lot of them, and 10 of those pairs have already been promised to the Lord of Treasured Light, the small cow-headed beast said. The Lord of Treasure Light, that's just a metamorphosis stage sea beast. I can take care of it. I'll give you 7 days to prepare and come to my cave abode to exchange for woodbud flowers. If you don't turn up by then, hee. Han Li's voice trailed off mid-sentence, but the implied threat was quite apparent. He swept a sleeve through the air and a gentle breeze was swept up, following which he abruptly disappeared on the spot. The cow-headed beast and the three-headed python were quite startled to see this, and only then did they realize that the red threads they had been bound by had also vanished. After recovering their freedom, the two demons' beasts looked at one another, and after a long while the three-headed python whispered to the cow-headed beast, "Is that man really gone?" The cow-headed beast hesitated momentarily before opening its mouth to expel a green bead. The bead rotated in midair for a while before releasing an azure barrier of light that enshrouded both of the demon beasts. "We should be fine now. This is a soundproof barrier set up with my inner core. If that man tries to eavesdrop on our conversation using his spiritual sense, then I'll definitely be able to sense him," the small beast replied. The three-headed python was feeling much more reassured upon hearing this, and it asked, "Are we going to exchange for woodbud flowers with that man?" "That's not something the two of us can decide. We have to discuss this with the others as well. However, if we want to gather all of the items required for this offering, then this appears to be our only choice," the small beast replied with a wry smile. Golden marrow crystal insects and golden coral sand are also very rare. If we use them to exchange for woodbud flowers, we may not be able to gather this much next time, the giant python reminded. "We have no choice. The spirit insects and coral sand are indeed extremely difficult to find, but we'll be able to track them down as long as we're willing to invest more time. In contrast, the Tian Peng race requires a vast quantity of woodbud flowers, and this flower is already extinct everywhere else aside from on the mountain that man is living in, so only he can provide them to us," the cow-headed beast said in a resigned manner. "In that case, why don't we inform the Tian Peng race of this when they deploy people to collect the offerings? That way, they can take care of that man in our stead," the three-headed python suddenly suggested. "HMPH, that would be akin to suicide. Have you not learned your lesson from last time? Even if the Tian Peng race really is capable of killing this man, they'll definitely take all of the woodbud flowers on that mountain, but we'll still be forced to offer the same amount of woodbud flowers in the future. If we tell them that the woodbud flowers are almost extinct in the hidden Black Mountains, then do you think the Tian Peng race will continue to let us live? If we supply insufficient woodbud flowers, we'll be severely punished regardless of how much extra of the other items we offer. Those woodbud flowers seem to be extremely important to the Tian Peng race, and if it weren't for the fact that they're extremely wary of that black infernal mist, they would have very likely deployed people to permanently settle on the island," the cow-headed beast replied in a cold voice. "But if things continue like this, even if we manage to survive this ordeal, we won't be able to source everything required for the next offering, and we'd still end up with the same result. The Tian Peng race has planted slave marks on our bodies, so we'll die from self-detonation as soon as we stray more than 5,000 kilometers away from this place," the three-headed python said in an urgent voice. "I'm naturally aware of all this, but that's not a cause for concern. Have you forgotten the promise made to us by that powerful being within the black infernal mist? As long as we can supply spirit stones to him for another century, he should be able to achieve full mastery of the abilities that he's cultivating, and he'll be able to wipe away our slave marks. When that time comes, we'll be able to escape without any qualms," the cow-headed beast said in a serious manner. But is that really a promise that we can rely on? Don't forget that even though he was a senior of ours, back when he fled for his life into the black infernal mist, he devoured the core of a giant ancient ghost, so he possesses a half-ghost, half-demon body now, if something were to go wrong. The three-headed python was rather hesitant. Are you worried that he won't keep his promise? You can rest assured. That senior also hailed from our luminous beast race, and he has a blood vendetta against the Tian Peng race, so he'll definitely side with us. Besides, we've been supplying him with spirit stones in secret for several centuries to support his cultivation. He has no choice but to help us, the cow-headed beast said with a shake of its head. Looks like I was overthinking things. Speaking of this black infernal mist, I wonder what lies within it to elicit such a fearful reaction from the Tian Peng race. Has that senior ascertained what's in there? The three-headed python asked in a curious voice. He hasn't, but there's definitely something quite sinister in there. Even with his current power level, that senior only dares to remain in the outskirts of the black infernal mist and doesn't dare to go any further. However, this black infernal mist has existed for countless years. Apparently, back when it first came into existence, that era was when the Tian Peng race was at the height of its powers and ruled over virtually the entire flying spirit race. The cow-headed beast replied with a wry smile. That's true. Regardless of what lurks within that black infernal mist, it won't be of any benefit to us. With our cultivation bases, we'd be dead as soon as we entered the mist anyway, the three-headed python sighed with a nod. After that, the small beast and the giant python conversed with one another for a while longer before the former withdrew its demon core, and they flew away as streaks of demonic winds. Not long after their departure, spatial fluctuations erupted from nearby, and a faint azure humanoid figure emerged out of thin air. It was none other than Han Li, who was supposed to have left quite a while ago. He glanced at the departing beasts in the distance with a smile on his face, then suddenly made a grabbing motion toward the spot where the two beasts had originally been situated. Golden light flashed, and a fingernail-sized golden insect suddenly emerged. It was a gold-devouring beetle that had been shrunk down to less than a tenth of its original size. The insect spread open its wings and flew onto Han Li's palm. Han Li pointed a finger at the spirit insect as he closed his eyes, instantly withdrawing the wisp of spiritual sense that he'd imbued the beetle with. As a result, he was able to glean the entire conversation between the two beasts. Black infernal mist, half-ghost half-demon, slave marks. Interesting. If the people on the Tian Peng race are unable to reside on the island, then I won't have anything to fear. Who would have thought that a few demon beasts of such a lowly caliber would be able to procure a vastly effective body refinement medicine like the golden marrow crystal insect? Even the body integration stage elders of Deep Heaven City are unable to source such a medicine. If I can find another few ingredients, I'll be able to manifest my Provenance true devil projection in a substantial form, much like the Vajradharmic body of the Buddhist factions. As for the golden coral sand, that's also something I'm in urgent need of it. If I can use that to refine my blood and flesh, it'd definitely make my body even more powerful. After murmuring to himself for a while, Han Li suddenly burst into elated laughter. However, his laughter quickly cut off as a thought suddenly occurred to him. The projections of the great bird and the five-colored phoenix abruptly appeared behind him, and a pair of glittering and translucent wings emerged from his back. Han Li only had to gently flap those wings before his body was propelled through the air as a translucent thread. A long azure rift instantly appeared in the air as if something were slicing through space, quickly disappearing into the distance. After unleashing his thunderstorm wings, which had already been refined into a spirit treasure, the speed of Han Li's flight was enhanced by severalfold. In just over 2 days, he flew out of the island's boundaries and appeared over a region of the ocean that was tens of thousands of kilometers away from the island. This region of the ocean was littered with coral reefs of all shapes and sizes, the largest of which resembled small island, while the smallest only had just enough room for a single person to stand on. And Li had his arms crossed as he hovered in midair above a coral reef that was several acres in size. This was the location of where the so-called Lord of Treasured Light resided, and Han Li had learned of this location from using the soul search technique on that fish demon. This Lord of Treasure Light was actually a demon beast that had only recently ascended to the 8th grade. Around 200 years ago, it had roamed to this place and settled here after subduing 7 or 8 nearby sea beasts. The cow-headed beast and the demon beasts on the island had exchanged some spirit medicines with this demon beast's subordinates, and that was the only connection they had with this metamorphosis stage demon beast. As such, they decided to employ this demon beast's services through the use of golden marrow crystal insects after realizing that they wouldn't be able to conquer Han Li's cave abode on their own. Of course, these beasts had only done this after underestimating Han Li's true cultivation base, thinking that he was a nascent soul cultivator at most. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to engage in such a suicidal endeavor. Han Li didn't delay any longer as he flipped his hand over to extend a glossy black palm from within his sleeve that slowly pressed down toward the coral reef down below. A resounding boom erupted as the projection of a small mountain surfaced from the palm, then rapidly expanded within a burst of gray light before taking on a substantial form and slowly descending. Han Li had maximized the size of the divine essence-effused mountain, expanding it to over 10,000 feet in size, and the divine essence-effused light emanating from the bottom of the mountain swept forth, enshrouding a region of the ocean that was several acres in size. Before the mountain had even descended onto the coral reef, a resounding boom had already rung out, and the massive commotion naturally alerted a certain hidden cave abode beneath the coral reef. Moments later, the seawater nearby parted, and two balls of demonic chi, one blue and one red, suddenly emerged. A furious voice sounded from within one of the balls of demonic chi. "Who dares to wreak havoc in front of our cave abode? Don't you know that the Lord of Treasured Light resides here?" Han Li didn't even bother to give a response, as he pointed a finger at the mountain down below in a casual manner. The gray light beneath the mountain immediately swept forth, ensnaring the two balls of demonic chi. Following a few flashes, two howls of anguish erupted from within the gray light. The two demons within the balls of demonic had self-detonated and disappeared as a storm of blood. They were only a pair of 6th-grade sea beasts, so Han Li naturally wasn't going to pay them any heed. In the next instant, the mountain finally struck the surface of the ocean. A massive vortex with a radius of around 500 meters immediately appeared due to the power of the divine essence-effused light, and the surrounding seawater roared as if there were a gargantuan demon lurking within its depths. The entire region of the ocean was cast into complete turmoil as countless fish and crustaceans fled in shock and horror, and there were also a dozen or so sea beasts with bodies that were over 10 feet long among them. Han Li's antics finally drew a roar of fury from deep within the ocean. Immediately thereafter, 5 bursts of black chi erupted from the edges of the vortex, and the burst of black chi at the forefront surged to reveal a burly man with fleshy bulbous growths on his head. He wore a suit of blue bone armor and was wielding a pair of large black war hammers. A cold smile appeared on Han Li's face, and before the demon beast had a chance to say anything, he made a hand seal, and the divine essence-effused mountain tremored before vanishing on the spot. Almost at the exact moment, the armored man felt as if the sky above him had dimmed significantly, and he hurriedly looked up to discover that the divine essence-effused mountain had already appeared over their heads and was crashing down with devastating might. Before it had even reached them, just the fierce gusts of wind it was sweeping up was making him unsteady on his feet. The man's expression changed drastically as he immediately hurled his war hammers toward the massive mountain. At the same time, he transformed into a blue worm that was over 100 feet long and fled into the distance. Following 2 dull thumps, the 2 black war hammers expanded to several tens of feet in size, but they weren't able to leave so much as a single mark on the divine essence-effused mountain. Instead, after being swept up by the divine essence-effused light, both of the war hammers plummeted uncontrollably out of the sky. As for that blue worm, it was unable to get far away, either. It had only flown just over 300 feet before a streak of gray light flashed toward it, following which it was completely immobilized. At this moment, Han Li pointed a finger at the mountain in an expressionless manner. The massive mountain rotated in midair before a burst of enormous power instantly erupted from its bottom. The blue worm within the gray light only had a chance to let loose a cry of sheer horror before its body was crushed into mincemeat, leaving only its giant head unscathed. Worms were among the demon beast with the most powerful bodies, but an 8th-grade sea worm was naturally unable to oppose the might of the divine essence-effused mountain. Throughout this entire process, the worm didn't even get a good look at Han Li before its physical body was destroyed. However, its soul had managed to survive in the head of the worm, and it unleashed some kind of secret technique to transform the worm head into a ball of piercing blue light, which managed to struggle free from the gray light before hurtling away as fast as it could. Right at this moment, a silver fire raven whistled forth, flying so quickly that it crashed into the worm head in the mere blink of an eye. Another howl of anguish rang out, and a miniature green worm rushed out of the worm head, attempting to flee for its life, but the silver flames instantly incinerated it into nothingness. Thus, only the worm head remained hovering in midair. It had only managed to survive as Han Li had intentionally held back on the power of his spirit, engulfing heavenly flames. As for the four other sea beasts within the balls of black chi, in the instant that the divine essence-effused mountain began to rotate, they had been reduced to swaths of blood mist without being able to offer up any resistance whatsoever, and even their souls had been completely destroyed. After killing all 5 demon beasts, a faint smile appeared on Han Li's face as he waved a hand through the air. The worm head was immediately drawn toward him, and he carried it in his hand as if it weighed nothing. After inspecting the head through narrowed eyes for a while, white light flashed from his hand and the worm head disappeared, having been stowed away into his storage bracelet. He then thrust a palm toward the divine essence-effused mountain from afar, and the mountain blurred before reverting back to a projection, the finally disappearing without a trace. After stowing away the mountain, Han Li turned and prepared to leave. However, he then glanced at the massive vortex down below that hadn't yet disappeared, and after a brief hesitation, he suddenly changed his mind. Azure light erupted around his body as he flew into the vortex as a streak of azure light. The seawater parted in the face of the azure light, and it only took Han Li moments to arrive at an underwater mountain below the coral reef. Han Li took an indifferent glance at the mountain before flicking a finger toward it. A streak of golden sword chi immediately shot forth before disappearing into space in a flash. Following a resounding boom, a ball of golden and blue light exploded. A layer of blue light then appeared, but was instantly shattered amid a loud explosion. A white coral gate appeared halfway up the mountain. A smile appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. This was most likely the Lord of Treasured Light's cave abode. Another streak of sword chi flashed past, and the coral gate was pulverized amid a flash of golden light. The interior was devoid of seawater, and a corridor-like azure passageway was revealed to Han Li. Han Li's eyes flashed before he strode into the cave abode. The passageway was rather long, extending for close to 1,000 feet. When Han Li slowly emerged into a hall that lay on the other end of the passageway, his eyes immediately lit up. This hall was around 500 to 600 feet in size, and it was extremely luxurious and grandiose. The entire floor was paved with pristine, flawless white jade, and there were glowing thumb-sized phosphorescent beads embedded into the walls at regular intervals of roughly 10 feet. On the ceiling of the hall hung a piece of coral that was as crimson as fire. It was emanating faint hints of warmth, completely eradicating the humidity that one would expect in an underwater cave abode. Han Li was rather surprised by how lavish this cave abode was, but he soon turned his attention to a grayish-white stone block situated on one side of the hall. This stone block was very crude and seemed to be made from the most ordinary stone material. If it weren't for the fact that it had been placed in front of an extremely intricately crafted jade table, one could easily mistake it for a flat slab of stone. However, in a hall where everything was so dazzling and eye-catching, this stone block stood out like a sore thumb. Han Li cocked his head to the side in a brief moment of contemplation before making a grabbing motion toward the stone block, trying to draw it closer to him for a more thorough inspection. However, an unexpected scene then ensued. In the face of the enormous suction power being exerted by Han Li's palm, the stone block remained completely unmoved. Han Li's heart stirred upon seeing this, and following a brief hesitation, he slowly strode forward before placing a fingertip onto the stone block. An icy cold sensation flowed toward his arm first, yet before he had a chance to withdraw his fingers, the frosty sensation was replaced by a scorching one. Han Li was rather surprised by this development. He placed his entire hand onto the stone block, and sensation emanating from the block interchanged between hot and cold, then converting into a warm feeling in his arm that was very pleasant and comfortable. After internally inspecting his arm with his spiritual sense, Han Li wasn't able to notice anything amiss. He furrowed his brows as golden light radiated from his body. He then clenched his fingers to try and pick up the stone block. Letter 1D627, letter 1D45F, letter 1D452, letter 1D452, letter 1D638, letter 1D626, letter 1d624, letter 1d630, letter 1d4c2. However, even though the stone block was only several feet in size, it refused to budge so much a single inch in the face of Han Li's immense strength. Han Li was finally starting to become quite astonished now. He placed his other hand onto the stone block as well, and one hand turned a glossy black color while the other took on a pristine and translucent white hue. All of the joints in Han Li's body popped and cracked as he exerted an incredible amount of force directly onto the stone block. The entire halls tremored violently amid a dull rumbling, and the stone block finally budged slightly, but then immediately fell back to its original spot. Countless cracks suddenly appeared on the ground with the stone block at the center. All of the nearby jade bricks underfoot were reduced to powder, revealing the black and rugged ground down below. Profound fine iron. Han Li was able to immediately identify this material, and his face was full of surprise. However, he then immediately withdrew his gaze and focused his attention on this mundane-looking stone block. At this moment, a small section of the stone block had sunk deep into the black ground down below, making it appear as if it naturally grew there. This stone block was definitely no ordinary item. Setting aside everything else, it was by far the heaviest object by volume that Han Li had ever seen. Even though he hadn't completely activated his Provenance True Devil Arts just then, the fact that he was unable to move it with his body, in conjunction with the 100 Meridian Refinement mantra, indicated that this block was most definitely close to 10 tons in weight. If he recalled correctly, the heaviest of all precious materials was the legendary Profound Heavenly Heavy Metal. A fingernail-sized chunk of profound heavenly heavy metal could flatten a strong grown man. Furthermore, even though Han Li was unable to determine its weight for now, the material of this stone block was certainly not lighter by volume than profound heavenly heavy metal. In fact, it was most likely even denser and heavier. With that in mind, Han Li continued his examination. Golden light flashed as a streak of sword chi came crashing down toward the stone block. The streak of sword chi was vanquished, but the stone block remained completely unscathed. Han Li didn't find that to be all that surprising. If such a mysterious material couldn't even handle a single streak of sword chi, then he was going to be quite disappointed. However, as a result of that experiment, Han Li's interest was piqued even further. He flipped his hand over to produce a small sword that was several inches in length. Golden light flashed once again, and the sword elongated to become a golden longsword that was around a foot in length. Han Li held the sword in one hand before bringing it down upon the stone block without any hesitation. A massive boom that was louder than the previous one rang out as countless streaks of golden light exploded on the stone block. Silver flames then enshrouded the entire stone block, and the sound of exploding firecrackers erupted. However, the stone block's condition remained completely unchanged. But after Han Li scanned over the surface of the block with his spiritual sense, a hint of elation appeared on his face. He immediately sat down beside the stone block with his legs crossed as he made a hand seal, continuing to scorch the stone block with his spirit engulfing heavenly flames. A burst of pure azure spiritual power flowed relentlessly into the silver flames from between his hands. Time passed by slowly, and a day and a night flew by in a flash. All of a sudden, Han Li let loose a low cry, and the silver flames were withdrawn before reverting back to its fire-raven form, then disappearing up his sleeve. At this moment, Han Li had already risen to his feet, and he made his way over to the stone block again to conduct a thorough examination. At first glance, the stone block appeared to be completely identical to how it was in the past. However, as blue light flashed through Han Li's eyes, he was able to identify that there were some signs of melting on the surface of the stone. Those signs were virtually undetectable to the naked eyes, but they certainly weren't going to escape the notice of Han Li's spirit eyes. By his estimations, it would take at least several decades to completely melt the stone at this rate. Upon arriving at this conclusion, Han Li became quite elated rather than dejected. For cultivators like them, several decades was nothing, but this stone block was most definitely an extraordinary treasure. He didn't know how that Lord of Treasured Light had discovered this thing, but there was no way that it would have been able to move this stone block. It was most likely the case that it constructed its cave abode around the stone block instead. It would be quite a troublesome prospect to take this stone block away from here. After all, it was extraordinarily heavy, and if he were to stow it away into his storage bracelet, it would instantly crush the storage space. Hence, he could only move it through manual labor. However, Even if he were to completely activate his Provenance True Devil arts, he'd only be able to move a third of this stone block at a time. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to take flight. Han Li stared at the stone and fell into deep thought for a long time. He then rustled his sleeve, and a faint buzzing sound rang out as two golden flowers shot forth from within. The two golden flowers then immediately transformed into a pair of thumb-sized golden beetles. These were none other than two of his mature gold-devouring beetles. The beetles let loose a sharp screech before immediately flying onto the stone block and attempting to devour it from two different directions. Meanwhile, Han Li looked on with an intense, unblinking gaze. Even though gold-devouring beetles were supposed to be capable of devouring all things, Han Li didn't have much confidence in their ability to chip away at such an extraordinary stone block. However, in the next instant, the concerns in Han Li's heart were completely erased. Even though the gold-devouring beetles were eating away at the stone block at an extremely slow rate, two small divots had indeed appeared on the surface of the material after a while. Sure enough, these beetles really were capable of devouring this object. Han Li was ecstatic upon seeing this. However, mere moments later, the two gold-devouring beetles suddenly fell off the stone block and plummeted to the ground amid a couple of massive thumps. Han Li faltered slightly upon seeing this. He raised a hand, and golden light flashed as one of the gold-devouring beetles was drawn into his grasp. He immediately discovered that this gold-devouring beetle was immensely heavier than a normal beetle. Han Li raised his eyebrows with a hint of surprise on his face. Thankfully, aside from its staggering weight, nothing else was amiss about the beetle, and its wings and legs were still tremoring incessantly. After praising the beetle for a while longer, Han Li finally figured out what had to have happened. It was quite clear that due to the extraordinary attributes of this stone block, even gold-devouring beetles weren't able to immediately digest the material. As such, even devouring such a small amount in one sitting had exceeded their tolerance limits. It appeared that the two beetles would require some time before they returned to normal. With that in mind, Han Li stowed away these two gold-devouring beetles, but another two beetles flew out of his sleeve to replace. The same process was repeated, and the two gold-devouring beetles were soon also unable to cope with their massive body weight any longer as they plummeted to the ground, before being picked up by Han Li. However, on the next occasion, 4 gold-devouring beetles were released to replace them. After most of a day had passed by and over 1,000 gold-devouring beetles had been released in succession, around a tenth of the stone block had finally been devoured, and as a result, the block had also been divided up into 3 sections. Han Li nodded with satisfaction at the sight of the 3 smaller stone blocks, which were roughly equal in size. After making a hand seal, brilliant golden light erupted from his body once again. At the same time, the golden projection of the 3 heads and 6 arms appeared behind him once again. Han Li bent down and heaved, finally managing to slowly lift up one of the 3 blocks. Even though he felt as if a small mountain were weighing down up him, he was able to fly with this weight, albeit with quite a bit of difficulty. A smile appeared on Han Li's face, but he put down the stone block to conduct another careful search of this cave abode, trying to see if there were anything else that could catch his interest. In the end, nothing else caught his eyes aside from a few marine material and some spirit stones. Han Li wasn't feeling very disappointed as he wasn't harboring any high hopes in the first place. After stowing away those items, he returned to the hall once again. On this occasion, he carried the other 2 stone blocks to an extremely obscure place in the cave abode, then set up an illusionary formation to conceal them. After that, he picked up the final block and flew out of the cave abode. When Han Li reappeared over the surface of the ocean, brilliant spiritual light was shimmering from his body, and his thunderstorm wings appeared along with the projections of the azure bird and the rainbow phoenix. With a flap of his wings, his body shot forth as a translucent line, disappearing into the distance in a flash. The stone block he was carrying was truly extraordinarily heavy, and despite the fact that he had unleashed his thunderstorm wings, he still had to take breaks every few hours to recover his energy before continuing onward. 3 days later, Han Li returned to his cave abode in the hidden Black Mountain ranges and set the stone block down in his secret chamber. During the following 2 days, Han Li was in no hurry to leave the cave abode again. Instead, he began to conduct all types of experiments on the stone block that he'd transported back with him. As a result, he discovered that aside from the fact that it was extremely hard, sealing the stone block with ice, striking it with lightning, and corroding it with devilish qi all proved to be completely ineffective. Furthermore, aside from his spirit engulfing heavenly flames, none of his other flames were capable of melting this stone block at all. Of course, the effect that the spirit engulfing heavenly flame had on the stone block was also very infinitesimal. This material really was perfect for refining top-grade defensive treasures. However, with its staggering weight, it would also be extremely powerful if it were to be refined into an offensive treasure like the divine essence-effused mountain. Following a series of experiments, those were the conclusions that Han Li had arrived at. As for how exactly he was going to use this stone block, that required further contemplation. A thought then occurred to Han Li, and he decided to examine the gold-devouring beetles in his spirit beast bracelet that had consumed this material, and the sight that greeted him gave him quite a surprise. The mature gold-devouring beetles had all fallen into a hibernating state, appearing as if they were about to evolve once again. These beetles were already fully mature, so if they were to evolve once again, then mutation was the only possibility. Han Li was naturally ecstatic to see this. However, this only made it even more difficult to decide just what he was going to do with this special material. After pondering the issue for half a day, Han Li decided to examine what changes the gold-devouring beetles were going to take on after their evolution before making a final verdict. 2 more days passed by in a flash. The 3rd day was the 7th day since Han Li made that agreement with the cow-headed demon beast. Early in the morning, not only did those 2 demon beasts arrive outside his cave abode, even the golden ape and the massive boar had turned up. All of the demon beasts were staring at the azure light outside Han Li's cave abode with fear in their eyes, and they didn't dare to make even the slightest sound to announce their arrival, silently waiting outside instead until when Han Li was ready to see them. When it was close to noon, the azure light disappeared like bubbles in the sunlight, revealing a massive stone gate that was over 200 feet tall. Following a loud rumbling sound, the stone gate opened of its own accord, revealing a shimmering white passageway. "Come in," an indifferent voice sounded from within the passageway. The demon beasts stirred upon hearing this, and they naturally didn't dare to oppose Han Li's orders as they entered the passageway one after another. Aside from the small cow-headed beast, the other demon beasts all had to shrink their bodies significantly before they were able to enter through the stone gate. A short while later, Han Li sat upon a stone chair within an antiquated stone hall in the cave abode, looking down at the 4 demon beasts once by, and his eyes lingered on the golden ape for slightly longer than when he was appraising the others. Before the demon beasts had a chance to say anything, Han Li swept a sleeve through the air, and a massive object flew forth before thudding to the ground. It was a massive blue worm head. The 4 demon beasts were all given a massive fright upon seeing this. "This is the head of that Lord of Treasured Light. Now that I've killed him, your deal with him is naturally void. Seeing as you've arrived here today, I trust that you've made your decision. Have you brought the items I asked for?" Han Li asked in an implacable tone. Looking at the shimmering blue worm head, all 4 beasts were able to sense the residual aura of an 8th-grade demon beast emanating from it, and chills ran down their spines in unison. "What other choice do we have? We've indeed brought along the items you've asked for, Senior," the cow-headed beast replied with a forced smile after exchanging glances with 3 other beasts. "Good. I've also prepared the woodbud flowers that you require. I can hand them over to you as soon as I ascertain that the items you've brought to me are satisfactory," Han Li said in an indifferent voice before sweeping a hand over the storage bracelet on his wrist. White light flashed, and a massive rectangular jade box appeared in his hand. After the lid of the box was lifted, a mesmerizing floral scent immediately wafted through the air. The jade box was filled with thumb-sized gold and bell-shaped flowers, and there appeared to be over 100 of them. Under closer examination, he discovered that the little bells were emitting a dense wood spiritual qi. They were actually small golden flowers that resembled bells. They appeared realistic, as if they were bells forged from pure gold. There are truly many woodbud flowers, and they seem to be over 1,000 years old. When he saw the flowers, the huge ape hummed and wore an astonished expression. Han Li chuckled. "Woodbud flowers, you've seen them before. How about the golden marrow crystal insects in the golden corral sand?" The small beast's eyes flickered with joy, but he calmly said, "I fear there isn't enough, but the 100 of flowers will qualify for an exchange of 10 pairs of beetles in accordance with our agreement." Han Li smiled and he tossed the jade box in front of him, then floating in the air. Then he flipped his other hand and produced a long jade box. The lid opened to produce a box brimming with woodbud flowers. The scene left many of the demon beasts dumbstruck. Han Li looked at the demon beasts and leisurely said, "This should be enough. Take out whatever crystal insects and coral sand you've brought along." Startled, the demon beasts whispered a few words to one another. Eventually, the small beast took out fist-sized crystals, and the other demon beasts took out palm-sized black gourds. In the blink of an eye, 15 crystals and 3 black gourds appeared in the hall. Han Li's eyes lit up, and he silently reached for them. Suddenly, one of the crystals floated and jumped into his hand. Han Li closely examined it. The crystal was clear and translucent. It was clearly condensed from a pair of pure white insects, unmoving as if they were fossilized. His immense spiritual sense instantly turned into countless threads and penetrated its crystal body, affecting the small insect on the top of the crystal. A layer of milky white light appeared from the surface of the insect. Then, it spat a drop of golden liquid from its mouth which seeped onto its body. Bright light radiated from the crystal, filling the air with sparkling golden light. When Han Li saw this, his expression stirred and he exerted strength into his grip on the crystal, forcing an immense pressure on it. The crystal's body simply flickered with light, but it wasn't harmed at all. Han Li muttered, "It really is a golden marrow crystal insect." "Senior, don't worry. We may be mighty bold, but we'd never deceive you." The small bull-headed beast wryly laughed. "Is that so?" Han Li neutrally replied. Then he put down the crystal and flicked his hand, summoning a black gourd into his grasp. He tilted it, pouring a river of purple gold sand out from it. Soon, a meter-tall pile appeared on the ground. Han Li pinched a grain of sand from the pile and brought it to his eye. He stared at it for a long while and poured out the sand from the other 2 black gourds into one combined pile. Han Li looked at the sand pile and casually said, "Not bad, this golden coral sand is of the best quality. With the addition of the 15 pairs of crystal insects, the 2 boxes of woodbud flowers are still more valuable, but I'll still agree to the trade." When the 4 demon beasts heard this, they nodded with joy. Han Li tossed the 2 boxes over, and the small beast and the huge gold-furred ape carefully put it away. Meanwhile, Han Li swept his sleeve across the ground. In an azure mist, the crystals and the gourds of sand disappeared without a trace. "I'm satisfied with this trade. If you find any golden coral sand or other rare items in the future, I will trade them for items you need. I don't only have woodbud flowers and I won't have you take a loss. You may leave." With no further intention of having the demons stay, Han Li dismissed them. Under the pressure of Han Li's immense aura, the demon beasts didn't dare to say anything further, and they respectfully and carefully withdrew from Han Li's cave residence. They promptly took off in a demonic wind. The demon beasts flew for over 500 kilometers in a single stretch before stopping and letting out a long sigh. They then gathered together again. The huge boar excitedly snorted, "This is great. I didn't expect that we'd get so many woodbud flowers in a single go. Furthermore, they're all over 1,000 years old. If we deliver all of them, the Tian Peng race definitely won't punish us even if we don't offer anything else." The huge ape frowned and said, "Yes, I didn't expect this person to truly acquire so many of the flowers. If I remember correctly, woodbud flowers didn't in such numbers on that mountain. Could it be when he scouted the mountain, he found other secret areas? From his tone, it seems he had even more flowers." The 3-headed python looked around and said, "That is most likely so. Having presented so many woodbud flowers at once, it's very possible he has even more. The Tian Peng race heavily values these flowers. They must be rare. They are most likely a specialty of our hidden Black Mountains." The small beast pondered for a moment and said, "Regardless of how rare the flowers are, it has nothing to do with us. So long as we can endure for 100 years and remove our slave markings, we'll be able to leave far away. However, we must supply as many high-grade spirit stones to that master as we can. Otherwise, if we make a mistake, all these years would have been wasted. With the woodbud flowers, wasting another 100 years won't be an issue. But what's key is that we truly don't have many spirit stones. Low-grade spirit stones are worthless to us, and mid-grade spirit stones are worthless to the master. As for high-grade spirit stones, they've all been exhausted from the mine. Furthermore, that master also wants us to give him 4 differently attributed top-grade spirit stones. Let alone the hidden Black Mountains, top-grade spirit stones spotted all around the island are all water attributed. It is beyond our ability to exchange them." The yellow-furred ape hummed. The huge boar muttered, In accordance to the master's words, the top-grade spirit stones are required to break through a bottleneck. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to achieve. The four demons turned silent for a spell. The huge three-headed python turned around and its center head slowly said, "If it were before, it'd be hard to say, but now that this powerful senior has come from a different place, perhaps he has other attributed spirit stones. That is something we've all thought of, but how can we use top-grade spirit stones at our cultivation? If we exchange for that item, I fear we will provoke his suspicion. We should think of other methods first. If we have no other options, we will trade with him," the small beast carefully said. "That sounds reasonable. After we deal with the Tian Peng race's envoy, we'll consider it further," the huge ape proposed. The other beasts eventually agreed one after another, having come up with nothing else. The four demons then turned into four clouds of demonic qi and flew off in different directions. At that moment, Han Li was inside his hidden room and was fiddling with the crystal insects. His eyes wandered as he pondered. The golden marrow crystal insects were incredibly famous throughout demons and humans, so he only managed to acquire a pitiful few of them alive. He also discovered that each and every single pair of them came at immense cost, enough to bankrupt a high-grade cultivator. As such, when Han Li heard that the grade 6 and 7 demon beasts were able to provide crystal insects to him, he was overwhelmed with joy. The crystal insects had many uses. Not only could he use it as a primary ingredient to progress his cultivation, but it also had clear results in body refinement. By applying the golden marrow that the insects spat out onto his body, he could easily cleanse his own marrow and essence, strengthening his body an entire step further. However, with the immense power of his current body, he figured the results would be less than he would expect. Rather than these two uses, Han Li was more hopeful of the more obscure third use. That was to use the crystal insect to temper his own provenance true devil arts projection into having a true body. With the vast power of this ability, he could fuse it with the provenance true devil to produce an extraordinary incarnation ability with the power of flattening mountains and silencing oceans. Naturally, similar abilities appeared in Buddhist sects which involved condensing Vajra arts. It wasn't a complicated technique, and many knew of it, but in addition to requiring supplementary materials that involved the golden marrow crystal insect, but it required several other legendary spiritual medicines. These spirit medicines were rare to the point they were equivalent to the golden marrow crystal insects. If he wanted to collect them all, they would be a matter of complete luck, so he couldn't rely on it. Han Li stared at the crystal in his hand and sank into thought. He suddenly flicked his wrist and produced another 4 crystals in front of him. Condensing the provenance true devil arts projection would take 10 pairs of crystal insects. As for the remaining 5 pairs, he would bluntly use them to reinforce his body. Furthermore, they would assist him in breaking through his bottleneck at mid-deity transformation stage. With all that smoothly decided, he had plans for the next 5 years. Without any hesitation, he took a crystal into his hand and summoned pure azure light around it, then closing his eyes. Underneath the provocation of spiritual power, the crystal formed from 2 still insects suddenly began to shake and open their mouths, each producing a golden drop. The 2 drops of liquid passed through the crystals and flowed down onto Han Li's hand where it fused with the azure spiritual qi. A moment later, the golden liquid glowed brightly with brilliant gold light. The light and the azure qi fused together slowly spread down his arm. In the blink of an eye, it covered his arm in golden light entirely. Once the golden light faded away, the skin on Han Li's arm had turned to shimmering gold. Han Li held his golden arm and muttered to himself. Golden light faintly pulsed from the arm once more, and a layer of shimmering white floated off from it and floated in the air. Han Li calmly breathed and had a tranquil face. Then he used his spiritual power to continue circulating this wondrous effect. 5 years can't be considered long nor short. During this time, not only did Han Li completely absorb the golden marrow of 5 pairs of crystal insects, but he also refined the golden coral sand with other medicines into liquid and had them absorbed into his flesh. As a result, 5 pairs of golden marrow crystal insects vanished along with 3 gourds of the golden coral sand. One day, Han Li opened his eyes from meditation and raised his hands. He took a glance at his seemingly ordinary hands and wore an odd expression. "I've absorbed much golden marrow and golden coral sand into refining my body, and my flesh is immensely strong, but I've made no progress to resolving my bottleneck at mid-stage. Could it be that the chance still hasn't come? Han Li sighed and gloomily closed his eyes when an azure light suddenly flashed from the wall of his secluded room. His second nascent soul flew inside in a ball of black light, and wildly spoke as it jumped around his hand. Han Li was stunned, but he soon chuckled. I've nearly forgotten. Those Tian Peng fellows are about to arrive on the island. I should get some knowledge of this foreign race. After muttering to himself, he stood up and walked out. Although he hadn't taken a step out of his room in several years, he ordered his second nascent soul to smoothly use puppets to monitor the actions of the four demon beasts. As a result, he overheard a private discussion of theirs and discovered that an envoy from the Tian Peng race will soon arrive on the island. Now that another foreign race is about to arrive, the demons have already prepared someone to receive them. When he killed the Lord of Treasured Light, he had used the spirit engulfing heavenly flame to consume his soul. Han Li now regretted he forgot to use soul-searching techniques on him. After all, a grade 8 metamorphosed demon beast should know much about the area. Although he already used the soul-searching technique on the golden fish demon beast, the fish hadn't gone too far out into the ocean and didn't understand much. He only knew that the ocean's name was the Scarlet Devil Ocean, and that the island Han Li occupied was the Dark Infernal Island. It was in truth only a peninsula. On the peninsula, a small portion was occupied by the hidden Black Mountains. Most of the island was enveloped in the black infernal mist. Fortunately, the peninsula was still linked to the Feng Yuan continent. He hadn't teleported to the other unfamiliar continents, much to his relief. Letter 1D4 1F, letter 1D5 FF, letter 1D4 1E, letter 1D6 AT, letter 1D6 A0, letter 1D4 1E. Letter 1D5 54, letter 1D5 60, letter 1D6 96. So long as he was on the Feng Yuan continent, there will be a method to return to the humans. In the oceans nearby the peninsula, there was a winged foreign race known as the Flying Spirit Tribe that governed the region. They are only a branch of the Feng Peng race. Furthermore, they are comparatively weaker of the tens of branches. Many other demon beasts have been expelled to the ocean from the continent by the Flying Spirit Tribe. Otherwise, the fish demon wouldn't have known this information. Apart from this, the fish demon had no other accurate information. The fish demon only had a vague impression that the Tian Peng race had a pair of wings and could draw on the support of their ability to transform into huge legendary birds in combat. This was something that the humans were aware of as well. As such, Han Li was very interested in seeing the Tian Peng envoy arriving to take tribute. Not long after, Han Li turned into an azure streak as he flew hundreds of kilometers through the air. A half-foot-long golden insect crawled on his shoulder. As Han Li flew forward, he stroked the gold-devouring beetles that recently awoken. The beetle had no changes to its appearance, but the beetles were incredibly heavy. When the beetles had begun to devour the strange stone material, they turned many times heavier. Fortunately, Han Li had already tested that these gold-devouring beetles' variants and discovered their original nimbleness had returned, and that each of them was incredibly strong. A single beetle could easily bite and drag something weighing over 500 kilograms. Han Li was dumbstruck by this result. Apart from these 2 points, Han Li hadn't discovered any more differences about these 5,000 changed beetles. It was unknown if there weren't any more changes, or that he hadn't discovered them yet. Feeling somewhat disappointed, Han Li wasn't sure what else to do with the 3 particular stones. A day later, an azure streak appeared above a short flat mountain. He blinked, and the azure streak faintly blurred until it eventually disappeared. Han Li fully used his abilities to completely conceal himself and his flight light, also decreasing his speed several-fold. After flying across a small lake, he arrived above a small green mountain covered in 10-meter-tall bamboo. At the center of the mountain, over 1,000 bull-headed lion-bodied beasts were grazing there. Han Li examined the beasts and soon looked at the other small mountains. At that moment, white mist filled the air. Han Li's eyes flashed with blue light. His bright-sight spirit eyes penetrated the fog, and he caught sight of a green stone gate. It was the cave residence of the small bull-headed beast. Han Li faintly smiled, and he rose into the air. Once he was 10 kilometers in altitude, he stopped. Afterwards, he cast several spell seals around him. Clouds of fog suddenly appeared in the nearby air. In the blink of an eye, he was hidden by a common gray cloud. At that moment, Han Li's shoulder shook, and the huge beetle brightly glowed in golden light. It turned into a beetle the size of a pea. Then it flew off and towards the small mountain. Han Li glanced at the insect. When it disappeared into the mountain, Han Li remained still inside the cloud. A quarter-hour later, light flashed from another corner of the sky. 3 large silver birds were riding on 2 demonic winds. Han Li narrowed his eyes and stared at the 3 birds. He saw their bird bodies were over 10 meters long and strikingly resembled a huge hawk. Their bodies shimmered in silver light as if their feathers were forged from silver. The pair of deep purple eyes on their heads also appeared quite sharp. The 3 large birds were clearly stifling their speed. But when they saw the small, pretty mountain, the 3 birds unfolded their wings and white lightning flashed from their bodies as they flew forward. They left the deep rumble of lightning in their wake. A short moment later, the 3 large birds arrived in front of the white mist wrapped in lightning. After they folded their wings, the 3 birds flashed with silver light to turn into 2 men and 1 woman. They were foreign beings with silver wings. Those are Tianpeng beings. Under closer examination, a trace of alarm appeared on his face. The 2 men appeared heroic while the woman appeared dainty. Apart from their wings, they appeared like young humans. From their aura, the 3 appeared to be on the level of deity transformation stage. The mean that appeared 30 years of age had the strength of a mid-deity transformation cultivator. The other 2 were at early stage. The 3 wore plain white robes, but the 2 men wore silver headbands while the woman wore a shawl. After making certain of their strength, Han Li felt relaxed. Then he silently chanted an incantation and completely withdrew his aura before drifting downward. The 3 hadn't discovered anything above them. They simply floated in front of the small mountain and calmly waited. A short moment later, 2 demon winds arrived in front of them, revealing the huge boar and the 3-headed python. The huge python promptly smiled and said, "Esteemed lords, welcome. Fellow Taoist Kui and Jin were currently checking the tribute and preparing a feast. We hope you'll honor us with your appearance." The 30-year-old man indifferently said, "There is no need to be so troublesome. We wish to return as soon as we have the tribute." The other 2 also appeared indifferent. It was no wonder they appeared this way. With the 2 demons' cultivation, how could they regard them with any importance? Were it not for the importance of the island's tribute, they wouldn't have bothered to speak. At that moment, the white fog parted from the mountain, and the green gates slowly opened. The small bull-headed beast and the huge golden ape emerged. They muttered a few words with an apologetic expression and welcomed the 3 Tianpeng beings into their cave residence. The other 2 demons closely followed. Unbeknownst to anyone, in the instant the gates shut, a gentle wind blew outside. The 4 demons gracefully welcomed the 3 Tianpeng beings. Although the 4 demons had yet to metamorphose, they had tables and chairs. The 3 Tianpeng beings simply took a seat, as the 4 demons deferentially stood at their side. After taking a seat, the younger man bluntly said, "All right, enough small talk. Tell us whether or not you have the tribute properly prepared." The small bull-headed beast trembled and quickly replied, "Esteemed lords, most of the tribute had been prepared, but there are some items that have been extinct from the island. We couldn't find them." The older of the men spoke with a sullen expression, "You haven't prepared it. HMPH, if the tribute isn't complete, you should know of the consequences. Without the tribute, what worth do your lives have?" The small beast trembled and hastily uttered a prepared statement, "Esteemed lord, please calm down. Although we are lacking some of the materials, we've prepared 50 woodbud flowers. I hope you will be pleased." "What? You've prepared 50 woodbud flowers?" The 3 Tianpeng beings exchanged a glance and smiled. A thought quickly flashed through the older man's mind, and he sternly said, "You had better not think of excusing yourselves with woodbud flowers that haven't yet aged." The small beast raised his frown in fright and he hastily replied, "We don't dare to do such a thing. Lords, please personally inspect the year of the spirit flowers." Meanwhile, the huge gold-furred ape turned his palm and white light flashed in front of him. He summoned 2 jade boxes full of woodbud flowers and offered them to the Tianpeng beings with both arms. The younger Tianpeng man skeptically received the 2 jade boxes and opened them. Suddenly, sparkling golden light lit up in front of him, and a medicinal scent filled the air. The 3 Tianpeng beings were startled, but they were soon overjoyed. The Tianpeng woman took one of the flowers and closely examined it. She excitedly said, "They truly are woodbud flowers over 1,000 years old. Their qualities are first class." "That's right." The older man's smile faded and he said, "You rarely hand over such high-quality flowers. Tell about the other materials you are lacking." The 4 demon beasts felt relief when they heard this and gave them an explanation. They then took out their other pieces of tribute and presented them for examination. The younger man began to check through the tribute. The golden marrow crystal insects and the golden coral sand are somewhat lacking, and there is only half the amount of azure light wood. Good enough, the older man nodded. There aren't many lacking materials. The additional woodbud flowers made up for your shortfalls. As a result of this tribute, we will bestow medicine pills for your slave markings. Next time we come, the more woodbud flowers, the better. Then, he shook his sleeve and released 4 azure jade bottles to each of the 4 demons. The 4 demons received the small bottles and repeatedly uttered their thanks. Once the 3 Tianpeng beings put away their tribute, they immediately left the small beast's cave residence. The 4 demons respectfully saw them out the gate. Once they saw the 3 Tianpeng beings fly off as birds, they returned to the cave residence with relief and proceeded with their discussion. The demons were completely unaware of the small golden beetle that was crouched in the corner of the room. It was still as death. Meanwhile, Han Li remained hidden as he followed the 3 large birds. His eyes wandered without end. Han Li had seen everything that happened inside the cave residence, including the tribute that was collected. He was certain they were planning their return to a meeting spot for their Tianpeng race. What he currently wanted to do was follow the 3 Tianpeng beings and find a safe route back to the heavenly origin continent. After all, in such a large sea, who knew what dangers laid hidden? Han Li didn't wish to run into the domain of an immensely strong existence. Furthermore, those from the flying spirit tribe appeared similar to humans. If he could find out a place where the Tianpeng race gathered, he could use his abilities to blend in and exchange information, materials, and medicines with them. Perhaps this foreign race had many rare treasures like gold marrow crystal insects. After all, the flying spirit tribe were different from humans and had items that were priceless to humans but were ordinary to the flying spirit tribe, and vice versa. With that in mind, Han Li's thoughts grew excited and continued to tail the 3 Tianpeng beings. With Han Li's abilities, the 3 weren't able to escape the range of his spiritual sense, and he could keep watch on them. As a result, the 3 birds in a single cultivator swiftly flew from the side of a peninsula and through the nearby ocean. After flying for 2 months, Han Li eventually saw a black line on the horizon. They finally arrived on the shore of the Tianyuan continent. At that moment, the 3 Tianpeng beings flew onto land. Close to the shore, there were fields of uneven hills. Han Li didn't dare to slow down and lose them. He increased his speed and closed half the distance between them. But then, something suddenly changed in front of them. In front of the 3 Tianpeng beings was a huge 2-headed bird and 7 other winged foreign beings. As soon as they appeared, they immediately surrounded the 3 Tianpeng beings as if they meant them harm. Han Li was alarmed, but he didn't stop. Soon, he found himself only half a kilometer away before he ceased flight. Letter 1D41F, letter 1D5FF, letter 1D41E, letter 1D68E, letter 1D6A0, letter 1D41E, letter 1D554, letter 1D560, letter 1D696. The huge 2-headed bird appeared frightening. It was 30 meters tall, and of its 2 heads, one was a worm, S, while the other was a tiger, S, but the rainbow feathers covering its body were gorgeous. As for the 8 winged beings, they also appeared quite frightening. Not only were their wings larger than the Tianpeng beings, but their scarlet wings seemed to be lit on fire. In the blink of an eye, the 3 Tianpeng beings returned to their human forms and wore solemn expressions. The older Tianpeng man harshly shouted at a large man in the group surrounding them, "Tianming, what is the meaning of this? This land is in the Tianpeng race's control. Why did your Kai Rong race appear here and block our way? Could it be you don't fear punishment of the 10 laws?" The large man wore a red robe, was bald, and had a brawny stature. The large man chuckled, "He, what is there to fear from the 10 laws? Obediently take out the items you have. If you pay allegiance to our Kai Rong race, perhaps we'll release you." The older man's expression changed, but his expression soon returned to normal as he asked, "What items?" The large, bald man sinisterly said, "Brother Feng Zio doesn't need to hide it. I'm talking about the woodbud flowers." The older man bluntly denied, "How could we carry something so rare? Tianming, could it be your mind is addled?" The large man wildly laughed. "It doesn't matter if you admit it. I'll be searching for you regardless. Ah yes, I forgot to tell you. Your sacred lord carrying Kun Peng true blood was killed after he was surrounded by 3 Zheng beasts that emerged from the depths. The flying spirit tribe removed the Tianpeng race as a branch." The 3 were astonished by this news. The younger Tian Peng man doubtfully said, "Nonsense. The sacred Kun Peng Lord would be able to escape even if he wasn't a match. How could 3 Zheng beasts stop him?" The large, bald man flapped his fiery wings and maliciously said, "Hee hee, if it were only Zheng beasts, they wouldn't be able to block him, but if he was already injured before and his wings were crippled, he wouldn't be able to escape." The older Tian Peng man remained calm and icily replied, "You think we'll believe you just like that? Enough nonsense. Even if Lord Tian Hua perished, don't think that we'll hand over our things." Light shined from his other two companions in preparation for a fight. When the large, bald man heard this, he snorted, and an ominous glint shined from his eye. The bald man was a mid-deity transformation cultivator, and his companions were at early deity transformation stage. In addition, with the huge two-headed bird, their fighting force was several times greater than the 3 Tian Peng beings. However, if the Tian Peng beings only focused on escaping, he wasn't confident they could hold them down. After all, the Kai Rong race wasn't renowned for their speed. If they faced similar grade beings, their prey would most likely escape. However, since the bald man already planned this ambush, he already had something in mind. A sinister expression flashed on his face as the large man waved his hand. The other Kai Rong beings flipped their hand and produced a short blue cylinder and pointed it behind them. With several pops, balls of blue flame shot out. "Not good, they're devil-trapping cylinders. Go quickly." When the older Tian Peng man saw this, he cried out and unfolded his wings without another thought. Silver light burst from his body. The other two quickly followed him, producing rolls of thunder. However, it was too slow. The surrounding balls of blue light suddenly erupted, turning in large blue nets that erupted in size. In the blink of an eye, the nets fused together and sealed off a kilometer of space in a giant cage. When the cage was complete, the 3 flashes of lightning were too slow and hadn't been able to escape. When the lightning faded, the 3 Tian Peng beings wore pale complexions. When the bald man saw that they trapped the 3 Tian Peng beings, he happily said, "Although it is the lowest grade devil-trapping net, it's still enough to hold you down. Feng Zio, do you truly believe you'll be able to escape the net as we attack you from all sides? It would be better to obediently surrender. If you don't reply, don't blame me for not trying. Combine our strength and quickly break through the devil-trapping net." The older man, Feng Zio, expressionlessly commanded his two companions. Soon after, he pinched his hands together and raised them. 2 dense bolts of lightning shot out and directly struck the huge blue net. His younger companions immediately opened their mouths and released dense bolts of lightning to add to the attacks. Suddenly, several eruptions sounded, and a net of blue light fused with silver light, turning the devil-trapping net into a blur. When the bald man saw this, he was thrown into a rage and he furiously shouted, "Attack! Don't hold anything back." Soon after, he blurred through the air and turned into a 10-meter-large scarlet bird. He flapped his wings and immersed himself with flames as he dived to the 3 Tian Peng beings. The other Kai Rong beings underwent a similar transformation and began their attack as flame birds. As a result, the 3 Tian Peng beings weren't able to continue their attacks on the devil-trapping net, and they could only transform into large silver birds, spitting lightning as they confronted their enemy. For a time, flames roiled and lightning wildly flashed. The nearby air was filled with burning heat and smoke. Only the huge two-headed bird remained unmoving in place. Henli let out a soft sigh, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. At that moment, the devil-trapping net surrounded him as well. Henli felt greatly depressed. Under ordinary circumstances, he could use his abilities to escape the net in an instant. But as he was hidden, he couldn't blink out of the net in fear that his aura would be revealed. In that moment of hesitation, he found himself in the restriction. Henli twitched his eye and could only helplessly remain in place. His mind pondered about the information he acquired. The Kai Rong race should be one of the 72 branches of the Flying Spirit tribe. It was unknown how they acquired information that the 3 Tian Peng beings had woodbud flowers in their possession, but this resulted in an ambush on their return path. The Kai Rong race dared to do this because the Tian Peng race's lord perished, so they were rendered helpless. In that case, wouldn't his original plan be fruitless? Could it be that he would have to give up on the Tian Peng race and find another gathering spot for the Flying Spirit tribe? That wouldn't do. After all, the Tian Peng race had very little differences with humans in appearance apart from their wings. He didn't know if there were other branches of the Flying Spirit tribe that would appear as similar. For example, the Kai Rong race appeared too fiendish and would be difficult for him to infiltrate. As these thoughts quickly flickered through his mind, he watched the ongoing battle between the Tian Peng beings and Kai Rong beings. Deafening thunder rumbled as countless silver bolts of lightning snaked through a roaring sea of flames. The three silver birds seemed to have turned into lightning itself. They didn't use beak or talons and appeared majestic, but as they were surrounded with so much flame, they found themselves at a disadvantage. Not only were the flame birds completely enveloped in fire, but when silver lightning occasionally struck their bodies, fire would flash and their injuries would instantly heal as if they had undying bodies. Furthermore, lightning flashed from the silver birds as they were wrapped in flames. They appeared uninjured, but their light was gradually growing dimmer. As the battle went on, a scarlet pearl appeared in the air above them at an unknown time. It emitted a red mist of light that enveloped an area of 100 meters. In the battle, a fire bird that was several times larger than the other let out a strange laugh. Feng Zio, you may be a similar grade to me, but with my fire dragon pearl, you aren't a match for me. A cold snort sounded, and a silver bird suddenly swiped its talons, cutting 5 white streaks through the air. They traveled quickly and fiercely sliced at the pearl above them. Boom! The surface of the fire dragon pearl glowed with red light and easily brushed off the attack. Hee, brother Feng Zio, don't think that luck will save you. The fire dragon pearl has restrictions placed by our race's elders. A single high-grade flying spirit master can't hope to harm it. The huge bird wildly laughed and flapped his wings several times, producing waves of flame. In the next moment, 3 silver birds were about to streak outside the range of the fire dragon pearl, but the pearl closely pursued them like a parasite. Because the silver birds were distracted, they received even more injuries and the lightning on their bodies began to weaken. When they saw this, the fire birds launched attacks with even greater fervor. The 3 silver birds could only strenuously block the sea of flames. When the bald man saw this, he sneered and only let out a clear shriek. The huge 2-headed bird finally took action. It unfolded its wings, and its 2 heads released a gloomy cry. Its huge body blurred and turned into a rainbow mist, directly wrapping around the 3 silver birds in the sea of flames. When the silver birds saw this, they were frantic. One of them sternly shouted, "Quickly use lightning movements to dodge. We cannot directly withstand the Kai-Hu bird." As soon as that was said, the 3 silver birds frantically turned into 3 silver arcs of lightning, shooting out from the sea of flames. They instantly received several strikes in their escape. But as soon as they left the sea of flames, they vanished in a blur. When the rainbow light swept past the air, the light faded to reveal the 2-headed bird once more. Its 2 heads began to repeatedly look around it. The fire dragon pearl in the air spun in place, as if it lost trace of the 3 silver birds. The fire birds were startled when they saw this. The largest of the birds withdrew his wings and turned back to human form amidst the rolling flames. He was the bald man named Tian Ming. He looked in the direction the 3 silver lightning bolts escaped and sneered, "Don't think that you'll be able to hide using the power of lightning. Apart from my fire dragon pearl, I've also brought spirit-sensitive wasps. I've already given them a crystal core from your race for them to track. Regardless of your skill in lightning evasion, you won't be able to escape them." With that said, the bald man spat out a red gourd. As it spun in the air, the gourd's mouth opened and suddenly released several yellow wasps. Each of them were several inches long and glimmered with light. The large man uttered a bewildering cry, and he pointed in the direction that the silver birds escaped. Suddenly, the 3 wasps buzzed as they flew off. The large man wildly laughed and waved his arm behind him. The other Kai Rong firebirds stretched their wings and closely followed each of the wasps. As for the huge 2-headed bird, it slowly flew in their direction. In that moment, the large man's sinister smile froze. The wasps began to fly in a circle and converged on an area nearby. They continued to fly in a circle. Could the wasps have found a Tian Peng being? The Kai Rong beings were all confused. However, the bald man was decisive and immediately reacted. He shouted, "Attack!" But before the firebirds could charge forward, a man's voice sighed from the location that the wasps were circling. Gray light brightly shined, and a spiritual light swept through the nearby space, enveloping the wasps and having them disappear. In their alarm, the firebirds instantly opened their mouths and launched pillars of flame. They only saw gray light flash in response. The fire pillars melted away in contact with the gray light and vanished. It was then that the firebirds were greatly frightened. They suddenly stopped their charge forward and looked with bewilderment as an unfamiliar man slowly appeared from the gray light. The man was azure-robed and had a common face. A pair of white wings appeared from his back. He seemed like a member of the Flying Spirit tribe, but he wasn't among the three Tianpeng beings from before. "Who is your esteemed self?" In the bald man's fright, he sternly shouted and emitted an astonishing presence from his body. "Who am I, you can't tell," Han Li replied with a smile. Although his face was calm, he was cursing in his heart. The foreign beings then exchanged a glance. He suddenly appeared before them and the wasps had tracked him down. How could he not be a Tianpeng being? Han Li inwardly pondered. Faintly sensing that this most likely had to do with the Tianpeng feather he forged with his thunderstorm wings. Fortunately, at the same time he emerged, he had his thunderstorm wings change color and form into an exact copy of the Tianpeng being's wings. The disguise was flawless. A Tianpeng being. The bald man looked at Han Li's white wings with a hateful expression. Han Li silently smiled. "Regardless of how you've come here, since you've come across us, your only choice is death. Kill him," the bald man commanded. The surrounding firebirds flocked around him and waved their wings, releasing a dozen claw streaks mixed with burning flames towards Han Li. At that moment, the fire dragon pearl flashed and appeared 100 meters above Han Li's head. A barrier of red light surrounded him. Han Li's brow stirred, but he still hadn't taken action. He simply waved a black palm and gray mist surged around him. When the claw streaks and flame entered the mist, they froze and soon, the mist slowly dissolved the attacks in flashes of light. Meanwhile, thunder rang from Han Li's wings and his body blurred. He disappeared in a flash of golden lightning. A moment later, he appeared above the red pearl in the sky and stretched forward, taking the pearl into his hand. The fire dragon pearl boomed. Not only did a fire-red barrier appear, but a 10-meter-long scarlet python appeared in the air. It fiercely bit down on Han Li's arm with fangs. A large bang sounded. Golden flight flashed from his arm to reveal thin golden scales on his skin. No matter how fiercely the fire python bit down, it wasn't able to pierce his skin. He grabbed the pearl and exerted strength in his hand. A faint golden figure appeared from his back and let out a brittle sound. Not only did the fire dragon pearl's surface forcibly crack, but the pearl's body crumbled underneath Han Li's immense strength. After he rubbed his two hands together, the crystal dust scattered in the wind. Han Li easily dealt with each of their attacks in the blink of an eye, and he destroyed the fire dragon pearl with brute strength alone just as quickly. All of the Kai Rong beings were dumbstruck by this display. "You actually destroyed a treasure of our race." The bald man was equivalently dumbstruck, but he was soon thrown into a rage when he recalled the consequences of the pearl's destruction. Letter 1D487, letter 1D4FB, letter 1D4E, letter 1D4E, letter 1D66C, letter 1D65A, letter 1D4EC, letter 1D4F8, letter 1D4AT. He let out a shriek and his body blurred, turning back into a huge bird as he fiercely shot towards Han Li. As for the huge two-headed bird, it turned into a mist of light as it moved to wrap around him. When Han Li saw this, he smirked. Without using any treasures, he simply flapped his wings, shooting away in a crystalline line. As he traveled, he blurred out of sight. The large, bald man in his firebird form opened his mouth without another thought and spat out a wave of purple flames, enveloping everything 30 meters in front of him. If Han Li were in the nearby area, he would have been caught by the flames. But largely against the large man's expectations, Han Li's target hadn't been the large man from the start. In a flash of white light, he appeared next to the huge two-headed bird. Despite the huge bird's size, it was amazingly quick. So as soon as Han Li appeared, the bird suddenly raised its worm head and spat a beam of icy light. But before the light even struck his body, the nearby air crackled. Various chunks of ice began to slowly form. The ice beam was incredibly cold, on par with Han Li's original celestial ice flames, capable of freezing the air itself. In a blur, it quickly arrived before him. Astonishment glinted from Han Li's eyes, but with a simple wave of his sleeve, he released a mist of gray light to meet the attack. When the icy light entered it, it seemed to freeze. In that moment of delay, rainbow light flashed from Han Li's sleeve, and a palm of pure white jade appeared. He waved his hand out, summoning the brief appearance of 5 sinister skulls. Then, a rainbow flame flared up from his palm in a grand display. Having cultivated the 100 Meridian Refinement mantra for so many years, Han Li was able to fully employ it with ease. He could bring forth the complete might of the divine essence-effused mountain and the unbreakable sink devils, and when combined with the strength of his body, their might increased several-fold, granting him strength an entire grade above his cultivation. With a light ring, the beam of icy light broke through the divine essence-effused light and struck his white jade palm. However, the rainbow flames simply began to revolve, and the beam of light was immediately absorbed into it without resistance. When the huge bird saw this, it raised its tiger head without any hesitation and released a transparent sound wave straight towards Han Li. HMPH. Han Li coldly snorted, and golden light brightly shined from his body, wrapping himself with light before the sound wave struck. A muffled rumbling sounded out, and the golden light clashed against the sound wave, resulting in a chain of explosions. However, Han Li paid no mind to these explosions. After several flashes, he broke through the sound wave and arrived in front of the huge bird with his fists raised. But the huge bird was fierce and turned its body. With huge talons glinting with cold light, it swiped its claw through the air. The sound of torn space loudly ripped, seemingly enveloping Han Li in the strike. His expression sank and his fists flickered, one with gray light and the other with rainbow flames, as he blocked the attack. Two huge booms shook the air. The huge bird suddenly let out a piercing scream, but before the huge claw could close around Han Li, it disintegrated inch by inch underneath flashes of radiant light, even turning into a cloud of blood. Afterwards, he blurred forward into the blood mist. A vicious gaze appeared in the eyes of the two-headed bird. With no regard for its destroyed claw, it extended its two heads and widely opened its mouths to bite down on Han Li. A fishy scent pervaded the air. When the other Kai Rong beings finally realized what was happening, they released a barrage of attacks in furious surprise. A wave of purple flames and countless fireballs shot forward, fusing together halfway to create a 300-meter-wide sea of scarlet flame. The flame birds stirred and each entered the sea, vanishing inside it. The sea of flames roiled and gathered into a huge wave over 30 meters tall, directly rushing towards Han Li. However, Han Li wasn't about to give them the opportunity to perform a pincer attack. With his hands already raised, a golden three-headed six-armed picture appeared on his back. Two golden arms from the image on his back blurred suddenly before vanishing. Meanwhile, two golden lights flashed near the bird, summoning two huge golden arms out of the air, each revealing a hand that was 3 meters wide and shimmering with golden light. They fiercely pounded down as they appeared. With two huge thuds, the bird was caught off guard and was firmly smashed by both of the fists. The bird stumbled from the impact, unable to keep its balance. Letter 1D4 1F, letter 1D5 6 3, letter 1D5 F2, letter 1D5 5 6, letter 1D5 6 8, letter 1D5 F2, letter 1D5 F0, letter 1D6 9 8, letter 1D4 6. Han Li then raised one of his hands against the oncoming wave of fire. A huge black mountain suddenly appeared and spun in the air, creating a lofty barrier to meet up the oncoming fire wave. The nearby air shook. The flame and gray light rolled against each other, finding themselves both at a deadlock. The divine essence-effused light was able to turn any of the 5 elements into nothing, but even that had its limits. Against the flames of the many Kai Rong beings, it was only enough to block it. However, that wasn't his objective to begin with. He saw a golden opportunity and shook his shoulders, causing the remaining 4 arms of the picture on his back to vanish in the blink. Meanwhile, the huge bird's surroundings blinked as 4 huge golden arms stretched into existence. The 4 arms tore through space as they reached forward, each arm strangely twisting until they held both of the bird's necks in a stranglehold. It was then that the huge bird sobered from being pounded by the 2 fists. It was greatly frightened by the sudden development and attempted to shake free with its huge bodies, attempting to flap its wings, but its giant body was still unable to budge in the slightest. The 2 fists that pounded the bird earlier had unknowingly grabbed a hold of one of the bird's wings some time ago, forcing it still. The huge bird was struck with terror. Before it could use any other abilities to escape, the 4 arms holding its 2 necks exerted an immense force. As mighty and brutish the huge bird's body may be, against this huge force, the neck broke like wet paper and separated the heads from the body entirely. Han Li then relaxed his incantation gesture, causing the golden figure on his back to vanish alongside with the 4 golden arms that had appeared. Soon after, the headless bird and the heads began to fall through the air. With a raised brow, he flicked his sleeve, releasing 3 silver fireballs to strike the body and the heads. With several crackles, the silver flames roiled and the body turned to ash. The flames then condensed together in a bird and returned to Han Li. "Run!" the bald man's voice shouted, aghast. When the bald man saw Han Li killed the huge bird which was equivalent in strength to himself, he quickly recovered from his rage. With the sound of tearing air, 9 firebirds shot out from the sea of flames towards the sky. Having realized that they wouldn't prove Han Li's match, and that they were chasing after the other Tian Peng beings to begin with, the large man prepared to withdraw. "Tian Ming, isn't it too late to run?" High in the sky, the voice of the older Tian Peng man sounded. Afterwards, silver lightning flashed and 3 large silver birds suddenly appeared. Having remained hidden this entire time, the Tian Peng beings finally took action, resulting in a grand ambush. Countless arcs of lightning were released, instantly creating a huge net of lightning. The bald man's firebird form let out a long screech. With him at the center, the firebird suddenly condensed into a single firebird over 100 meters tall. With purple flames wrapping around the giant firebird, it unfolded its wings and charged through the lightning net. The 3 huge birds were startled and didn't dare to block the way. The purple firebird's flames surged quickly, and with several blurs, it flew past the devil trapping net and appeared 300 meters away. Such a vast speed was shocking. When Han Li saw this, a light glinted from his eye as he floated in place. He had no intention of pursuing it. The 3 silver birds hesitated for a moment and didn't pursue it either. They simply returned to human form in a silver flash and boom of thunder. The older Tian Peng man looked at Han Li, who single-handedly repelled the Kai Rong beings. Not daring to slight him, he quickly saluted him from a distance and asked, "Many thanks for your help. We wouldn't have escaped calamity otherwise. However, your face is unfamiliar, brother. Could it be you're a clansman that have remained in secluded cultivation in the sea?" After some thought, Han Li calmly answered, "Even I don't truly understand if I am a Tian Peng being. My background is a bit peculiar as I've cultivated overseas until now. This is the first time I've come back to the Feng Yuan continent, but from our appearance, we seem to be of the same race. Otherwise, I wouldn't have helped you repel the Kai Rong beings." The older Tian Peng man named Feng Zio smiled and said, "He, there is no need for you to be so puzzled. You should be a clan descendant that was overlooked. In terms of appearance and aura, you are a Tian Peng being without a doubt. Furthermore, from your dense aura, you should be a direct descendant of our race. Otherwise, those spirit wasps wouldn't have sought out." The dainty Tian Peng woman had a flash of understanding and said, "Brother's abilities must have come from overseas. They quite different from ours." The younger man grinned and said, "Regardless of everything else, your Tian Peng aura is genuine. If not for our aura, we couldn't tell ourselves apart from the other branches that share our appearance." When Han Li heard this, he felt relief. It seemed that refining the Kun Peng feather would aid him in concealing his identity. He hadn't taken action in vain. He then said, "Since you all are sure, it should be correct. But from what that Kai Rong man said, the Tian Rong clan's circumstances aren't very good." Feng Zio sullenly said, "That's hard to say. It could just be provoking taunts, or something did happen to our clan. Even as we are comparatively weaker among the 72 branches of the Flying Spirit tribe, they wouldn't dare to brazenly plunder our goods." Certain that Han Li was a Tian Peng being, Feng Zio didn't hide his plans and calmly said, "Regardless if it is true, we'd best quickly return to our clan. The Kai Rong clan was able to attack us once. They could try again. With your grand powers, I fear we'll need to rely on your strength." The other 2 looked at Han Li with expectant eyes. Han Li's abilities had been truly powerful. If they had a clan member of such vast power, they didn't need to worry about the path ahead of them. Han Li muttered to himself for a moment and answered, "All right. Since I'm most likely a Tian Peng being, it is only natural for me to provide my fellow beings with some strength." Since this would grant him a good opportunity to enter the Tian Rong clan, he definitely wouldn't refuse. Feng Zio repeatedly thanked him and said, "We'll have to trouble you. After we return, I will certainly report your merit to our elders." The other 2 smiled in response. When Han Li heard the word merit, he appeared indifferent. When he looked at the blue net surrounding them, he smiled and said, "Let's not linger here any longer. I'll get rid of the devil-trapping net." With that said, Han Li pointed to the net in the distance, and the silver firebird that was circling him immediately let out a melodic ring before shooting towards the net in a ball of flame. A light pop sounded, and the silver flame directly struck the blue net. immediately creating a person-sized hole. Afterwards, silver flame quickly spread through the net. The huge blue net was destroyed in the span of several breaths, as it turned to ash underneath the gray flames. Under the spirit-engulfing flames, the net burned like paper. The three Tianpeng beings blankly stared at the scene. When they saw this, they viewed Han Li's abilities with even greater importance. "All right, let's go." With that said, Han Li formed an incantation gesture and silver flames condensed into a ball, forming back into a firebird. It then vanished into his body without a trace. The party of four then set off over the horizon. For some unknown reason to the three Tianpeng beings, Han Li remained in human form, so the three hadn't transformed into their bird form either. They simply crossed the sky in balls of silver light. Han Li was greatly interested in the flying spirit tribe's ability to change forms, but he didn't rashly pursue the topic. He simply used the excuse of having always cultivated overseas to indirectly inquire about the flying spirit tribe and the Tianpeng clan. These matters weren't a secret, so Feng Zhao and the two readily answered him. As such, not only did Han Li come to understand much about the flying spirit tribe and the Tianpeng clan, but he also came to know that the younger two in the party were brother and sister, an elder brother named Bai Lei and a younger sister named Bai Ning. Of course, the three Tianpeng beings also asked Han Li a few questions, but Han Li always answered that he rarely encountered others because of his dedicated and secluded cultivation. Seeing that Han Li was unwilling to divulge this information, Feng Zhao and the others were unwilling to pursue the topic. To them, it was enough that Han Li was a Tianpeng being. Afterwards, Feng Zhao brought Han Li across a land of hills, then flying across grasslands and several forests, before arriving at an endless mountain range. This had taken place over the span of a month. During this time, they hadn't encountered any more Kai Rong beings, but they did come across many low-grade Tianpeng beings. However, it was a pity that these members seemed ignorant of any internal clan happenings. As such, Feng Zhao and the two felt somewhat relieved. It seemed that the Kai Rong beings' words were false. Even if the higher echelon of the Tianpeng race sealed off this information, that meant they could preserve order over their clan. Once they entered the mountain range, they began encountering Tianpeng beings in far greater number. There were those flying in both their bird and human forms. Han Li took note that, although the shape and style of their wings were completely the same, the color would often be different. Most Tianpeng beings had azure and white wings, while others would have silver wings like the three in his party. There were even those with gold and black wings. However, these Tianpeng beings were very rare. He only saw two of each on their journey. Those with the three majority colors didn't have anything special about them, but those with the two rarer colors were entirely different. Despite the lower cultivation of the golden-winged Tianpeng being, Feng Zhao and the other two appeared very respectful and took the initiative to greet them. As for the two black-winged beings, the three wore stiff expressions. They simply ignored them as they flew past. The two black-winged beings also had lesser cultivation to the party. Han Li took notice of this and found it strange. But from his experience, this likely had something to do with a taboo in the clan. It wasn't something that he could carelessly inquire about. As a result, 3 days after he entered the mountain range, they eventually came across a Tianpeng patrol squad. The patrol consisted of about 30 members and flew forward to meet them. They all wore white bone armor and held a silver long spear. From their aura, they appeared to be at foundation establishment and core formation stage. But in case of a patrol squad, they could be considered an elite group. The middle-aged man in charge quickly saluted with a smile as soon as he spotted Feng Zhao. "Greetings, Spirit Feng and Lords Bai. Under the Elder's command, you three are to report to the Myriad Peng Pavilion as soon as you return. Yi, who is this lord?" As soon as this was said, he looked at Han Li with an odd expression. Feng Zhao's expression changed when he heard this. He then promptly introduced Han Li. "This is Brother Han. He's cultivated overseas and has returned to the clan. Brother Han, no need to feel awkward. We'll introduce you to the elders. You should take a rest at the Holy Mountain first. Given your abilities, the elders will definitely see you." Han Li indifferently replied, "It's nothing. Since this is my first time back in the clan, I plan on taking a look alone. Brother Feng should hurry on." After a moment of thought, Feng Zhao gave a wooden plate over to Han Li. "Our holy city is majestic. I fear you'll have to spend much time to become familiar with it. Here is my command token. Apart from a few restricted areas, you'll be able to take a look at the rest of the city without anyone blocking you." He turned around with a sullen expression and commanded the middle-aged Tian Peng being, "Send someone to personally guide Brother Han. He is an honored guest." As you bid, Feng Zhao clearly held a high position in the clan from the core formation-grade patrol leader's response. "Brother Feng, you're quite considerate," Han Li said with a smile. Feng Zhao regretfully replied, "How? In truth, this is actually quite lacking. When the time comes, I'll personally guide you through the holy city." Soon after, the three in his party saluted Han Li and turned into large silver birds before shooting off. As soon as Feng Zhao flew off, the middle-aged Tian Peng being waved his hand at his subordinates and pointed at a 19-year-old man, commanding, "Hua Yu, bring this lord to the lodge. You must properly attend to him." The man with a scholarly appearance immediately bowed and agreed. Soon after, the middle-aged man uttered a few words and bowed to Han Li. The rest of them then continued the patrol. Under the guidance of the young man Hua Yu, they headed deeper into the mountain range. The young man spoke to Han Li with the utmost respect and didn't speak unless answering Han Li's questions. But as a meager foundation establishment-grade being, he didn't know many important matters. He could only give Han Li curt responses. After following this person for several hours, they arrived in front of a dozen small mountains lined up in a row. These small mountains had black clouds covering them and sparked with lightning. They continuously boomed and were difficult to see through. Han Li narrowed his eyes at the sight. With his exceptional attainments and restrictions, he promptly saw through the dark clouds. They were clearly a formidable illusion restriction. As expected, Hua Yu brought Han Li up to one of the small mountains. He then unfolded his wings to reveal white feathers and flew into a space inside the small mountain. A muffled bang sounded. A small mountain twisted as if it were only an illusion in the water. With several shakes, the small mountain disappeared with a ripple, only to reveal a huge passage of fog. The youth flew in without any hesitation. Han Li raised his brow but followed after him in an azure streak. After flying for a kilometer, his surroundings lit up around him. He saw a giant city that seemingly had no end. Letter 1D4 1F, letter 1D563, letter 1D556, letter 1D4 1E, letter 1D430, letter 1D556, letter 1D5F0, letter 1D428, letter 1D426. The city was carved out of mountains and had city walls constructed from huge white bricks. The city walls only appeared to be 60 meters in length, but they were surrounded by giant verdant mountains. The walls had no gate, but they had a dense white barrier covering them. There were over a dozen places in the wall that had giant straight pillars erected. The pillars shined rainbow and emitted a faint light. As of current, there were many Tian Peng beings that were flying through the gap in the pillars to enter the city. The Tian Peng youth Hua Yu waited for Han Li to take in the huge city and said, "Sir, please follow me." Han Li nodded and unfolded the wings on his back. Then he followed the youth to the closest pillar. On the way, the youth took the initiative to explain, "My lord should be careful not to stray far from the heavenly pillars. The gaps in the city barrier only span 150 kilometers around the pillars. The city's Tian Peng restrictions are famous among the 72 races of the Flying Spirit tribe. With these restrictions alone, we can withstand enemies that outnumber us several-fold. Since ancient times, the city restrictions have allowed us to escape extermination time and again." The youth spoke with a tone of pride. Although Han Li didn't examine the city's restrictions, the fearsome spiritual pressure of the barrier made him feel the youth's words were true. After a blue light flashed wildly from Han Li's eyes, he began to notice a few remarkable areas. Deep in the glaring white light above them, he could faintly see floating silver and azure threads of light. They appeared exceptionally thin, but most of the fearsome spiritual power the barrier was emitting seemed to be coming from these threads. Han Li took several deep looks at them before following the youth past the side of a huge pillar. A short moment later, the two appeared inside the huge city. At a glance, the various buildings in the city greatly differed from human buildings. The city buildings were all in the shape of cylinders with conical roofs. Their heights all varied, with the tallest of them reaching over 300 meters in height, while small ones were only 10 meters tall. However, the reach of the buildings had several semicircle arched doors and windows. What particularly surprised Han Li was that nearly half of the buildings were constructed out of mountain cliffs. There were even caves built out of steep mountain walls that resembled a beehive. The youth respectfully said, "Sir, the honored guest lodges are spread throughout various areas of the city. Would you like to stay at the closest one? It should be empty. It makes no difference. Let's do as you say, Han Li answered indifferently. Yes, the youth uttered a word of acknowledgement and led Han Li at a low altitude, allowing him to take on the many sights in the city. They also brushed past many winged men and women. 2 hours later, they arrived at a large group of buildings and landed on a platform nearby. The platform was connected to a circular 3-story building. When the two dropped down, 2 young women with white wings rushed out and saluted them. So it was Big Brother Huayu. Will this lord be staying at the honored guest lodge? When Huayu recognized the maid, he solemnly said, By Kui, this is Lord Han. He is an honored guest of Spirit Feng Zio. Attend to him properly. A trace of astonishment appeared on her dainty face, and she respectfully answered, A guest of Spirit Feng Zio. I will definitely treat this lord well. Han Li took a glance at the young woman and noticed that her weak aura was Qi condensation grade. He simply nodded and walked into the building. The young woman lowered her head and closely followed after him. Huayu didn't dare to enter and simply waited outside for the time being. A moment later, Han Li's voice sounded from inside. This place is to my liking. You may leave. The youth felt some relief and uttered a word of farewell before flying off. On the 3rd floor of the building, Han Li was standing behind a semicircle window and narrowed his eyes as he watched the youth slowly depart. The maid named Bai Kui was standing 10 meters behind him in a helpless manner. Without turning his head, Han Li uttered, How many people are there in the holy city? After a pause of surprise, the woman hastily answered, The holy city is extremely large. Although there haven't been detailed accounts, there are at least 40 million people. 40 million, that few, Han Li uttered with a tone of doubt. The woman hastily explained, Only those that can cultivate to the point they can take spirit form can enter the city. The clansmen that have lesser cultivation and can't transform don't have the qualifications to enter. Although we are one of the weaker branches of the flying spirit tribe, we still total over 1 billion in number. So it was like that, Han Li said with a tone of realization. She stole a glance at Han Li and hesitated for a moment before asking, My lord, is this your first time in the holy city? Are there many honored guests like me that have entered the holy city for the first time? Han Li indifferently asked. The woman carefully explained, My lord must be joking. Very few people check into the honored guest lodge in the first place, and if they aren't outer tribesmen that checked in for the first time, they are outer tribesmen that have come to the holy city on business. There is nothing to be surprised about. This is my first time returning to the clan. I've always cultivated overseas, Han Li calmly said. He then asked, Are there any maps of the holy city on sale? If there is, tell me where and I'll buy one. The maid respectfully said, There is no need for my lord to head outside and buy a map. There is a particular map that is prepared for the honored guests that reside in the lodge. Its detail is far beyond what is sold. Han Li felt surprised, but he promptly commanded, Oh, that is very good. Go ahead and give me one. Yes, my lord. The maid took 2 steps back and swiftly went downstairs. Han Li stood in his original place by the window and began to ponder about his plans moving forward. He wanted to infiltrate the Tian Peng race so that he could acquire the rare materials that the Flying Spirit tribe had. As for their treasures and tools, Han Li hadn't given them much thought. Although he only saw a battle involving the Flying Spirit tribe, they didn't seem to rely on treasures and tools too much in combat. It was unknown if they were skilled in tool refinement, or if the high-grade existences in the Flying Spirit tribe didn't draw assistance on common tools. The grand treasures like the Devil Trapping Net and the Fire Dragon Pearl only seemed to have an auxiliary nature. However, these still didn't catch much of his interest. So long as he could acquire some useful materials, the trip here would have been worth it. As for the quarrel between the Tian Peng and the other branches of the Flying Spirit tribe, he had no interest in involving himself. While Han Li mulled over these thoughts, the maid returned to the 3rd floor with an emerald green bamboo tube that was only several inches long. Despite its size, a luster glinted from its surface. Feeling somewhat shocked, Han Li promptly reached out to the tube that was offered to him. In a gust of wind, a green streak shot out and arrived in his hand. Afterwards, he waved his arm at her, and she promptly descended after a swift salute. Alone, Han Li fiddled with the bamboo tube in his hand with great interest. He then sank his spiritual sense into it and saw a huge man clearly etched on the interior of the tube. The tube was mostly similar to a jade slip, but it was still quite peculiar to produce something similar to a jade slip with refined bamboo. It appeared the flying spirit tribe wasn't lacking in tool refinement and had their own uniqueness. In any case, Han Li's spiritual sense quickly focused on the tube's interior and concentrated on the image of the map. In the time it took to finish a meal, he let out a sigh and withdrew his spiritual sense from the tube entirely before wearing a pensive expression. The holy city was a bit smaller than he expected. It was comparable to a human city that housed 100 million people. In any case, the city was still astonishingly large. It would take most of a day to fly from one end of the city to another. And Li wasn't very interested in buildings apart from the largest trading hall in the city. The hall was constructed on a huge mountain at the side of the city. The mountain was where people traded items. It was about the same as a human or demon market. Apart from this building, Han Li was also curious in a place called the Spirit Transmit Hall. It was where the Tian Peng Hall specialized in supplying a few high-grade cultivation arts to their clansmen. The map also marked a few forbidden areas. Han Li took note of them and had no interest in pursuing them further. He then closed his eyes and committed various parts of the map to memory. After going through the information once more, he unfolded his wings and wrapped himself in azure light. He then silently flew out the window directly towards the large trade hall. The Tian Peng race wasn't in a stable situation. He was unwilling to stay in this place for more than half a month. It'd be best if he gathered the materials he needed and left as soon as he could to save himself from being involved in anything troublesome. However, Han Li didn't wish to attract too much attention, so he flew at a slower speed that matched other Tian Peng beings in the city. Because the trading hall was located at the edge of the city, Han Li only traveled halfway in a quarter hour. At that moment, he spotted a huge tower not far from his front. It was over 2 kilometers tall, and it wasn't a commonly seen cylinder. It appeared to be in the shape of an octagon, with each side appearing flat and smooth, apart from a few particular talisman designs on each side. These designs emitted a faint black chi that gained Han Li an familiar feeling. The top of the tower had several 3-meter-tall crystals that emitted 7-colored light that covered the tower. The black chi was trapped in the rainbow light barrier, preventing it from escaping. Han Li stroked his chin in surprise. If he remembered correctly, the tower should be a forbidden area in the city. It was the so-called Spirit Seal Tower and was given no description. There wasn't a single Tian Peng being that dared to fly 300 meters within range of the tower.